Chapter 96. Within the Shao Manor, Xiao Meng blankly stared at the secret letter in his hand, and did not speak for a long time. After a long while, Xiao Meng finally let out a long sigh. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the main halls of the imperial palace. His eyes were filled with sorrow and indescribable grief. "Father, what happened?" Xiao Yinyu asked worriedly with a frown as she looked at Xiao Meng's sorrowful expression. Xiao Xiaolong was also puzzled as he looked at his powerful father. Xiao Meng had forbidden them from leaving the manor since morning. This caused the siblings who were planning to go to Fong Fong's little store to be extremely shocked. Compared to the carefree Ouyang Xiaoi, Xiao Yinyu was more perceptive. She could guess that the reason her father forbade them from leaving the Shao Manor was to protect them. If they needed protection even within the imperial city, then there could only be one explanation. The imperial city was no longer safe, or in other words, it was no longer safe for the children of important officials like them. "The imperial city is in chaos?" Xiao Yinyu asked Xiao Meng with a voice that was like the chirping of an oriole in an empty valley. Xiao Meng glanced at Xiao Yinyu as the muscles on his face slightly trembled before he slowly opened his mouth. "His Majesty has passed away." When Xiao Yinyu and Xiao Xiaolong heard this, their bodies trembled. Then, their eyes abruptly widened. Not only the Shao Manor, but all of the influential officials within the imperial city also received the news. The news of the emperor's death instantly swept through the entire imperial city like a tsunami. The emperor of a generation, Emperor Chongfeng, had passed away. This was an earth-shattering event for the entire Light Wind Empire. The situation within the imperial city was already obscure to begin with. Following the emperor's death, the imperial city suddenly surged like an undercurrent. The struggle between the crown prince and the second prince for the throne also began to move from the shadows to the light. This was evident from the fact that the influential officials within the imperial city ordered their children to obediently stay in their manors. Once the struggle for the throne began, they would need to rope in helpers and require the support of the officials. This support would need to be earned by themselves. In order to make the officials submit and fight for their support, they would need to use some shady methods, such as threats, kidnappings. They would resort to any means necessary. On this day, the news of Emperor Chongfeng's death spread. The crown prince, Ji Chenggan, hurriedly entered the palace. King Yu also sped up his horse and entered the main hall. After about an hour or so, the crown prince and King Yu left the palace respectively. They prepared their carriages and started touring the residences of the various ministers, trying to rope them in. The battle between the crown prince and King Yu was finally a complete showdown. Zhao Mansion left Minister Zhao Muxing's mansion. As the Light Wind Empire's Minister of the Left, Zhao Muxing's status was highly respected. Even the princes had to show him respect when they met. This was enough to show his status in the Light Wind Empire. It could be said that he was second only to the empire's guardian, Xiao Meng. Zhao Muxing was not considered old, and he looked rather robust. However, his black and white hair gave him a sense of vicissitude. He sat on the armchair, narrowed his eyes slightly, and patted his lower abdomen with his palm. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door, and a figure stepped into the room. "Father, I'm back." Zhao Rouge, who was wearing a brocade robe, elegantly stepped into the room and respectfully saluted Zhao Muxing, who was sitting on the armchair. "How did it go?" Zhao Muxing narrowed his eyes and indifferently asked. "Everything went smoothly and we did not fail. However, why did father send people to capture Ouyang Xiaoi? Aren't you afraid of angering that lunatic, Ouyang Qi?" Zhao Rouge puzzledly looked at Zhao Muxing. He did not know why Zhao Muxing wanted to get involved in this mess under such circumstances. Ji Chongfeng is dead, he's dead. The soup in the imperial city is finally going to boil. In order to make this soup more flavorful, of course, some adjustments are needed. Zhao Muxing opened his eyes. His eyes were deep and peaceful, as if they contained an aura that could calm one's heart. The reverence in Zhao Ruge's heart became even more intense. You can leave now. Don't mistreat that little girl. We only caught her to take the lead. If she gets injured, that Ouyang Qi might really come after us. That old fart really treasures his granddaughter, Zhao Mushing said with a chuckle. Let him cause a ruckus with the crown prince and King Yu first. Let him stir up this pot of soup. Zhao Ruge was slightly startled. Then, as if he understood something, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile as he nodded and left. Zhao Mushing once again chuckled as he watched Zhao Ruge's departing figure. After Zhao Ruge left Zhao Mushing's room, he walked around the Zhao Manor for a while and soon arrived in front of a room guarded by 2 fifth-grade battle kings. Keep an eye on that girl. She's very clever, don't let her get away with it, Zhao Ruge solemnly said. The 2 battle kings solemnly nodded. Zhao Ruge looked at the quiet room and the corners of his mouth curled up. I'm really curious. If Owner Bu found out that you were kidnapped, how would he react? Would he bring that iron lump of his and directly charge out? That would be interesting. Inside the Crown Prince's palace, the Crown Prince had a bitter smile on his face as he looked at the overbearing old Master Ouyang who was standing in the middle of the hall. He really could not bring himself to be angry at this doyen. Old Master, I swear on my life that I definitely did not touch a single hair on Ouyang Xiaoyi. Ji Qingan solemnly made a gesture of assurance toward the old Master Ouyang. Motherf *Ker. Who else could it be if it wasn't you? If even a single hair on my darling Xiaoyi's head is harmed, I'll *King demolish this Crown Prince's palace. The old Master Ouyang did not have a good temper. He pointed at the Crown Prince's nose and fiercely scolded him, causing the Crown Prince's expression to fluctuate. However, the Crown Prince had no choice but to smile apologetically as he watched the old Master Ouyang swagger away. Similarly, after leaving the Crown Prince's palace, the old Master Ouyang directly went to King Yu's manor and scolded King Yu. However, he still did not receive any news about Ouyang Xiaoyi. However, after the 2 of them were scolded by the old Master Ouyang, their originally hostile actions became slightly sluggish. Their confrontation was no longer as brazen as before. When the old Master Ouyang returned to the Ouyang Manor, his expression was no longer as domineering as it was when he scolded the Crown Prince and King Yu. Instead, it had become somewhat unsightly. If King Yu and the Crown Prince did not capture Xiaoyi, then who was the one who captured her? In the Imperial City, who would have the guts to capture his, Ouyang Qi's, granddaughter? The old Master Ouyang pondered. Finally, a name appeared in his mind. Zhao Mushing? For 3 days in a row, the number of customers in Fang Fang's little store became extremely sparse. It was so sparse that Bufang was bored to death every day. He could not feel the changes in the Imperial City. The only thing he could feel was the decrease in customers. It had already been 3 days since Ouyang Xiaoyi last visited the store. She learned from Fatty Jean, who came to eat on time every day, that the current situation in the Imperial City was extremely grim. All the major families were carefully choosing which side to support. That was because the Emperor had passed away and the Crown Prince and King Yu had started a battle for the throne. Bufang was completely baffled by what he heard. He did not have the slightest idea about the so-called battle for the throne. After listening to a few sentences, he walked away in a daze. However, the news of the Emperor's death still made him feel rather emotional. However, he was very concerned about the news of Ouyang Xiaoyi being kidnapped. After all, the little girl was his server and a member of Fang Fang's little store. Since she was Bufang's employee, he could not allow himself to be easily bullied. Bufang was curled up on a chair as he admired the continuously falling snow. The pure white snow had already begun to wrap the entire Imperial City in a layer of silver, making it appear extremely beautiful. Owner Bu, you seem to be quite free. It seems like I came at the right time, a familiar gentle yet slightly domineering voice rang out. Zhao Rouge was standing at the entrance of the store with a smile on his face as he looked at Bufang. Chapter 97. Zhao Rouge, who was wearing a brocade robe, was elegant and handsome. He stood at the entrance of the store and smiled as he looked at Bufang, who was curled up in a chair. Bufang raised his eyebrows in surprise. He remembered this guy. He had tried to tempt him with crystals twice in the past, but was resolutely rejected each time. However, Bufang still remembered Zhao Rouge's appearance. Bufang stood up from his chair, glanced at Zhao Rouge and simply asked, "What do you want?" Zhao Rouge stepped into the store, shook off the snow on his body, and let out a breath. Then, he sat down on a chair and glanced at the menu. After such a long time, the store seemed to have added quite a few dishes. The delicious dishes cooked by Bufang involuntarily appeared in his mind. His stomach slightly growled and Zhao Rouge ordered a plate of sweet and sour ribs, improved egg-fried rice, and a jar of ice-heart jade urn wine. Bufang nodded his head, turned around and stepped into the kitchen to start cooking. Not long after, a rich aroma drifted out from the kitchen. The fragrance was incomparably rich, causing Zhao Rouge to sniff. Not long after, Bufang's slender figure walked out from the kitchen with a dish in his hand and placed it in front of Zhao Rouge. Zhao Rouge did not immediately start eating. Even though the dish was emitting hot steam and was continuously tempting the worm in his stomach, Zhao Rouge still endured it. His eyes landed on Bufang with a smile that was not a smile. "Owner Bu, where's Xiaoyi? Did she not come today?" Zhao Rouge's tone contained a trace of ridicule. Bufang expressionlessly glanced at him, then pulled out a chair and sat down in front of Zhao Rouge. He was neither fast nor slow, neither flustered nor flustered. "She did not come today," Bufang simply said as his pitch-black eyes locked onto Zhao Rouge's face. Zhao Rouge was incomparably calm. Even after being directly stared at by Bufang, his expression did not change in the slightest. After suffering so many setbacks in the store, this was the first time he felt as if he had the initiative and could face Bufang with a condescending attitude. "Owner Bu, aren't you curious as to why she didn't come?" Zhao Rouge said with a smile. This time, Bufang did not reply and only stared at Zhao Rouge. Zhao Rouge did not panic. With a faint smile, he removed the seal of the ice-heart jade urn wine and poured himself a cup of wine. The rich aroma of the wine immediately spread out and wrapped around the tip of his nose, causing him to reveal an intoxicated expression. In the past, he firmly believed that the Imperial Palace's bejeweled nectar wine was the best wine in the Light Wind Empire. However, ever since he drank the store's ice-heart jade urn wine, he was completely subdued by this fine wine. "Owner Bu, would you like a cup as well?" Zhao Rouge politely asked as he waved the celadone cup in his hand at Bufang. "Oh, wait." "Oh," Bufang softly replied. Then, under Zhao Rouge's awkward gaze, he stood up and walked toward the kitchen. After a while, he came out with a clean celadone wine cup. "Fill it up, you're welcome," Bufang said. Zhao Rouge was a little speechless as he looked at Bufang. "Can't you tell that I'm being polite? Given our relationship, would I ever treat you to a cup of wine? This wine is worth 15 crystals per piece. Most importantly, there isn't much of it." Under Bufang's sincere gaze, Zhao Rouge could not bring himself to refuse to pour a cup for Bufang. Thus, he could only fill up Bufang's cup with a straight face. Bufang picked up the celadone cup and took a sip of the wine. A hint of comfort appeared in his eyes. Outside the store, it was snowing heavily and the cold air was howling. What a wonderful feeling it was to sit in the store and drink a mouthful of wine that warmed up one's body. "Owner Bu, are you really not curious about why Xiaoyi didn't come?" Zhao Rouge asked again. He finished the wine in his cup and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Bufang. "Why do I need to know?" Bufang glanced at him and placed the empty celadone cup on the table. He picked up the jar of wine and filled it up for himself as he indifferently said, Zhao Rouge expressionlessly watched as Bufang drank the ice-heart jade urn wine he ordered. He suddenly felt a little sad. Why did he have to be so talkative? She's your employee. As an owner, don't you care about your employee? Zhao Rouge said. I care very much, Bufang said. How do you look like you care? The corners of Zhao Rouge's mouth twitched. He was a little speechless. Bufang finished another cup of wine and a faint warm blush appeared on his fair cheek. The alcohol was starting to take effect. However, once he started drinking the ice-heart jade urn wine, there was a feeling that he could not stop. Therefore, Bufang poured himself another cup. Zhao Rouge's eyes were about to spit fire as he looked at Bufang. How much is this jar of wine? You've already drunk 2 cups and you still want to pour more. Do you have any shame? Bufang placed the wine cup on the table and let out a long breath. Then, he said to Zhao Rouge, I'm very concerned, but I'm not worried because you guys won't do anything to the little girl. Bufang indifferently looked at Zhao Rouge. Zhao Rouge's pupils constricted as well. He did not expect Bufang to immediately guess that he was the one who kidnapped Ouyang Xiaoyi. Aren't you just trying to expose yourself by coming here to talk about this? However, I'm not worried because you guys won't dare to do anything to the little girl. You guys can't afford to offend the Ouyang family, Bufang said. Ha ha ha. Owner Bu, you're really insightful. Rouge, on the other hand, is being reckless. I wonder if Owner Bu is interested in joining forces with me? Now that the Imperial City is in chaos, it's a good time to pick a side. As long as Bufang joins forces with me, I can guarantee that Bufang's little store will become the most famous restaurant in the entire Imperial City and even the entire Light Wind Empire. Zhao Rouge's eyes suddenly became fervent as he stared at Bufang. Cooperate? Bufang expressionlessly looked at Zhao Rouge. Not interested. Owner Bu, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. My father is the current minister of the left and he definitely has the ability to make Bufang's little store the #1 restaurant in the Light Wind Empire. Owner Bu has a powerful puppet and a supreme beast as his companion. It would be easy for us to help one of them ascend the throne, Zhao Rouge said. Bufang glanced at Zhao Rouge, shook his head, and poured himself another cup of wine. Just like that, the jar of ice-heart jade urn wine was emptied. After finishing the wine, Bufang did not even reply to Zhao Rouge. He stood up unsteadily and slowly walked into the kitchen. Silence was a form of rejection. The fervent expression on Zhao Rouge's face gradually disappeared. Then, he calmly began to taste the sweet and sour ribs and egg-fried rice. However, when he picked up the jar of ice-heart jade urn wine, he discovered that the jar was already empty. At that moment, Zhao Rouge really wanted to smash the jar of wine onto Bufang's head. This guy was really impolite. After he finished eating, Zhao Rouge left behind some crystals and left with a belly full of anger. He only drank 1 cup of the ice-heart jade urn wine that cost 15 crystals per jar. The rest of the wine ended up in Bufang's stomach. How infuriating! In the Zhao manor, Zhao Mushing was wearing a large cloak made of crane feathers as he slowly walked through the garden of his home. However, there was indeed nothing beautiful about this silver-white garden. A figure floated in and landed in front of Zhao Mushing. He respectfully said, "My lord, the secret letter has been delivered to the crown prince." Zhao Mushing imperceptibly nodded his head. He raised his hand and a faint yellow stream of true energy floated in his palm, giving off a sense of tranquility and serenity. Very good. Has the young Duke Yang been captured? Zhao Mushing simply asked. He has been captured and placed in the same room as Ouyang Xiaoyi, the figure respectfully replied. Zhao Mushing lightly exhaled a breath of white air. The feather-like snowflakes fell on his palm and were stirred by the true energy on his palm. They were immediately shattered and dissipated. Under that tranquil and peaceful true energy, there was actually a terrifying power hidden. With the young duke and the Ouyang family's girl, the crown prince will not be able to resist the temptation. The Light Wind Emperor, very good. Zhao Mushing dispersed the true energy on his palm and slowly stepped on the snow as he left the garden. He left behind these meaningful words that lingered in the surroundings. Chapter 98. Ouyang Xiaoyi's eyes widened as she stared at the arrogant little boy in front of her. She knew this wimpy little boy. He was a very famous young marquis in the imperial capital, but why would this young marquis appear here? Yang Chen, the seventh son of the Marquis of Pacifying West, Yang Mo. Speaking of the Yang family, one had to talk about the Yang family's heroic deeds. The patriarch of the Yang family, Yang Mo., had 4 sons. The first 3 sons were all extremely talented and were once influential figures in the imperial city. Unfortunately, after they set off for war, all of them died on the battlefield without exception. In the end, Yang Chen was the only son left in the Yang family. Therefore, the Yang family was very concerned about Yang Chen. Because Yang Chen was the first successor to the marquis position, they could not afford to lose him. "What are you doing here, little girl?" Yang Chen was very arrogant. He had always set his brothers as his goals and worked hard on his cultivation. Now, he had also reached the level of a 4th-grade battle spirit. His talent and cultivation level could be considered top-notch among his peers. Ouyang Xiaoyi looked at Yang Chen's immature yet arrogant face and could not help but roll her eyes. She pouted and said, "Do you think I want to come here? There isn't even anything delicious here. This is simply hell on earth." Yang Chen did not seem to understand what Ouyang Xiaoyi meant. Although they were imprisoned here, the people who captured them did not dare to mistreat them. They were served 3 meals a day. The dishes that were served were very delicious, and Yang Chen ate them with relish. "You can actually eat this kind of food with such gusto. I can tell that you have never seen the world." Ouyang Xiaoyi crossed her arms in front of her chest as she disdainfully glanced at the dishes on the table and Yang Chen, whose mouth was dripping with oil. "You think I have never seen the world? You little girl, you are the one who has never seen the world. I have been to the Imperial City's Immortal Phoenix restaurant many times." Yang Chen was unhappy. His mouth was full of food as he muttered to Ouyang Xiaoyi. "Immortal Phoenix restaurant?" When the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was mentioned, Ouyang Xiaoyi snorted and rolled her eyes in disdain. "What? You're still looking down on Phoenix Goddess Restaurant?" Yang Chen widened his eyes as he stared at Ouyang Xiaoyi. Ouyang Xiaoyi curled her lips and said, "Compared to the smelly boss's dishes, the Immortal Phoenix Restaurant is just trash. You haven't even eaten Owner Boo's dishes before, and you still dare to say that you've seen the world. Let me ask you, have you ever eaten the fish head tofu soup that can increase the true energy in your body? Have you ever tasted sweet and sour ribs that can intoxicate you just by smelling the aroma? Have you ever eaten sparkling egg-fried rice?" Ouyang Xiaoyi listed a few dishes of Fong Fong's little store in a row. As a waiter, she was naturally familiar with the names of these dishes and was able to name them as soon as she opened her mouth. Yang Chen stared blankly at Ouyang Xiaoyi. He hadn't heard of any of these dishes before, but they sounded amazing. Could eating a meal actually increase one's cultivation? Humph. Awesome, right? I've eaten all of these dishes, Ouyang Xiaoyi said proudly. Yang Chen shoved a mouthful of food into his mouth with his chopsticks and said as he chewed, "It sounds pretty good. Where's the store? When are you going to bring me there to take a look?" When Ouyang Xiaoyi heard this, her eyes immediately turned and a smile appeared on her adorable face. She said to Yang Chen while grinning, "Let's go right now. These dishes aren't to my taste. I haven't eaten for an entire day." "Right now?" Yang Chen was dumbfounded. They were currently imprisoned, how could they get out? "The guy spying on us is only a 5th-grade battle king. With our cultivation levels, we should be able to catch him off guard and take care of him in an instant. At that time, we'll be able to escape," Ouyang Xiaoyi said with bright eyes. Yang Chen raised his eyebrows. He suddenly became excited and nodded his head. Then, without saying anything, Ouyang Xiaoyi fell onto the ground and started kicking her legs. She was crying and throwing a tantrum. Yang Chen was stunned by her acting skills. The guards heard the commotion and stepped into the room. They saw Ouyang Xiaoyi sitting on the ground and kicking her legs. "What's wrong? Why are you throwing a tantrum?" The guard impatiently knitted his brows. These two brats were actually so restless. "She thinks the food is too disgusting. She said your chef is a pig," Yang Chen seriously said. The guard did not know whether to laugh or cry. He walked toward Ouyang Xiaoyi's food, picked up some with his chopsticks, and smacked his lip. "The taste isn't bad?" Yang Chen approached the guard and nodded. "I think it's not bad too, but she thinks the chef is a pig, so she doesn't want to eat the food here and wants to go outside." The guard had already sensed that something was wrong. In the next moment, true energy burst out from Yang Chen's body and wrapped around the guard's limbs. Even though the guard was a 5th-grade battle king, he was still caught off guard by a sneak attack at such a close distance. Ouyang Xiaoyi jumped up from the ground, waved her fist, and greeted the guard's face with a punch. The Ouyang family's style was to take advantage of the enemy's weakness. Therefore, Ouyang Xiaoyi's 3 or 4 consecutive punches all landed on the guard's face. The guard fell to the ground and fainted. Then, Ouyang Xiaoyi pulled Yang Chen and jogged out of the small room where they were imprisoned. They sneakily snuck out of the mansion. It was a sunny day in the imperial city. The sunlight pierced through the clouds and sprinkled down. It was rather bright and beautiful. When it shone on one's body, it felt warm and extremely comfortable. After Bufang finished serving the first wave of customers, the store once again regained its tranquility. Therefore, Bufang pulled a chair and sat in front of the store like he did a few days ago. Today there was sunlight. The sunlight sprinkling down caused his entire body to feel warm and sleepy. This simple life was actually quite comfortable. "Smelly boss, save me!" At the entrance of the alleyway, a heart-wrenching voice rang out. Bufang, who had just closed his eyes, could not help but open them and looked into the distance in puzzlement. There, the figures of 2 brats were madly running. Behind them were a few experts with powerful auras. They were very fast and were about to catch up to the 2 brats. "Let's see where you can run to." A battle king took a step forward and directly grabbed Ouyang Xiaoyi. He lifted her up and sneered. They did not expect that the 2 canaries locked in the birdcage would actually escape and almost let them fly away. "Do you King know who this great ant is? Be careful, or else I'll ask my grandpa to strip you naked and hang you on the walls of the imperial city." Ouyang Xiaoyi was very angry. The smelly boss's store was not far away, yet she was caught. The feeling of anxiously waiting made her want to go crazy. "Smelly boss, save me! Black save me!" Therefore, Ouyang Xiaoyi yelled at the top of her lungs, hoping that Bufang would come out and save her. However, she felt that there was a higher chance that Blackie would save her. Blackie, who was lying on the ground, snorted. He opened his eyes and somewhat lazily yawned. He slightly stuck out his tongue and exhaled a mouthful of white gas. "Who's calling your lord go?" Blackus suspiciously scanned the surroundings with his eyes and quickly discovered Ouyang Xiaoyi, who was struggling at the entrance of the alleyway. "Why is this girl calling your lord go for no reason? Doesn't she know that you, Lord Go, are very busy?" Blackie lazily got up and slowly walked toward the entrance of the alleyway with cat-like step. Bufang slowly walked out of the store and stood at the entrance, expressionlessly looking at the entrance of the alleyway. "Blackie, save me!" When Ouyang Xiaoyi saw the big black dog slowly walking over, her big eyes immediately lit up and she shouted. Yang Chen twitched his nose that was a little stiff from the cold. He puzzledly looked at the dark and somewhat plump big black dog in front of him. The few guards were also looking at Blackie with strange expressions. Did this girl think that a dog could save her from the hands of a few battle kings? Should they say that this girl was naive? Or naive? However, in the next instant, the large black dog who spoke human language gave these people a huge fright. "Listen to the Lord go, let go of that girl." Black's gentle voice sounded out of nowhere. Chapter 99. Beside the gate of heavenly mystery, the Crown Prince's palace. Inside the vast palace, the Crown Prince sat alone. His expression was solemn, but his eyes were filled with a myriad of thoughts. On the table in front of him were several secret letters. Zhao Mushing, that sly old fox. He was the one behind all of this. The Crown Prince's expression flickered as he picked up the secret letters on the table. The more he read, the angrier he became. He quickly crumpled the letter into a ball. If only Xushi was here. Ji Chang'an let out a long sigh. If Xushi was here, he would be able to give him a good idea, and he would not be in such a passive position. The sudden death of the Emperor caught everyone off guard. If it was not for the fact that the news was accidentally leaked by a eunuch in the palace, who knew how long they would have been kept in the dark by the Emperor. Capturing Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Qin. This Zhao Mushing sure has guts. However, it's not impossible for me to cooperate with him. If I agree, it would mean that I would have the support of the Ouyang and Yang families. That way, it would not be so easy for my second brother to overthrow me, even if he colluded with the sects. The prince muttered to himself. Then, he unfolded the crumpled secret letter and carefully read it for a while. He seemed to have made a huge decision in his heart. What did you say? A few battle kings couldn't even watch over 2 battle spirit brats? Zhao Mushing lightly blew on the steam from the cup in his hand, and after taking a sip of tea, he calmly said. The face of a man in an embroidered robe in front of him suddenly turned extremely pale. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and fearfully said, "My lord, it was my negligence. I have already sent people to bring them back, but what?" Zhao Mushing indifferently asked as he continued to drink his tea. The man in the embroidered robe secretly glanced at Zhao Mushing before cautiously answering. The little princess of the Ouyang family escaped with the young duke to that mysterious store. Mysterious store? The one that has been the talk of the town recently, where even the emperor personally came. Zhao Mushing's hand that was drinking his tea suddenly froze as he asked in confusion. He had heard a little about that restaurant, but he did not know much about it. However, from the information he had gathered, the origin of this small restaurant was definitely not simple. A supreme beast and a puppet that can fight against a 7th-grade battle saint? This store has an unusual background. Have you investigated it? Zhao Mushing asked. I did, but I couldn't find anything. The man in embroidered gown said. It was precisely because of this that he was terrified, because Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Qin had run into the store. If they wanted to catch them again, they would have to go through the store. However, this store seemed to be very unusual. Humph. If you can't even find this out, what's the use of keeping you? Every year, I spend hundreds of thousands of crystals on your intelligence network, yet you can't even find information about a small restaurant? Zhao Mushing coldly glanced at the man and coldly snorted. That man was about to break out in cold sweat. Forget it. Perhaps this store is really mysterious. This continent is incomparably vast, and there are many unknown forces that we can't even imagine. It's not your fault that you can't find anything. However, you must bring back the girl from the Ouyang family and the young Marquis Yang. If you can't do it, you can do it yourself. In any case, I must see them, Zhao Mushing said. The man's expression turned ugly in an instant. Sir, but that store has a supreme beast guarding it. Moreover, that iron lump is not something that a mere 6th-grade battle emperor like me can deal with. A supreme beast? Humph. You really believe this rumor? Do you really think that a supreme beast would be a spirit beast guarding the door of a small store? Not to mention a small store, even the most mysterious sect of the 10 great sects, the Celestial Arcanum sect, does not have this kind of background and confidence. Obviously, Zhao Mushing did not believe that a small store would have a supreme beast guarding it. Perhaps Xiao Meng and Eunuch Lian's failure was actually a beautiful mistake? They were just carelessly fooled by that dog. Zhao Mushing was very confident because he had seen a real 9th-grade supreme beast and knew how terrifying that kind of existence was. How could it be a spirit beast guarding the door of a small store? This was completely unreliable. Zhao Mushing's indisputable attitude made the man in embroidered gown very sad. However, he could not voice out his bitterness, so he had to go. At this moment, he could only believe that his lord's guess was correct. There's actually such a strange dog in this world. It can actually speak. A 5th-grade Battle King stared at Blackie with a dumbfounded expression. He felt as if his entire world had been turned upside down. Yang Chen also stared blankly at Blackie. It was his first time seeing Blackie, and he did not expect this dog to actually speak. "Let go of that girl. Is this something a dog like you should say?" Yang Chen was speechless. "Ha ha. You fat dog, are you planning to play the hero and save the damsel in distress? This is simply..." The few Battle Kings were all laughing nonstop and could not stop at all. Bufang stood at the entrance of the store and could also hear these people's unstoppable laughter. However, his expression was indifferent, and a faint pity appeared in his eyes for these people. The Battle Kings who acted tough in front of Blackie were all dead. Thinking of this, Bufang could not help but say, "Lazy dog, go easy on them. Don't collapse the newly repaired floor again. If you repair it again, it will be troublesome." When Blackie heard Bufang's words, he immediately rolled his eyes and snorted. He was too lazy to pay attention to him. When the Battle King who was holding on to Ouyang Xiaoyi saw this scene, he could not help but frown. He was somewhat vigilant. A restaurant in an alleyway and a dog that could speak? Why did this information give him a sense of familiarity? To actually talk so much nonsense with a dog, I must be an idiot. This dog is so fat, I can just slaughter it and make it into a dog meat hot pot. Delicious. Another Battle King did not seem to mind. He coldly smiled, rolled up his sleeves, and walked toward Blackie. From his posture, it seemed like he was going to catch the dog. Blackie sincerely looked at the Battle King with its doggy eyes, then tremblingly stretched out a dainty and exquisite dog paw. "Hee, now you know fear. Unfortunately, it's too late. Even if you act cute, it's useless." That Battle King immediately laughed heartily. However, in the next moment, Blackie's doggy paw lightly touched his body. The Battle King's laughter got stuck in his throat, and his entire body froze on the spot. What's going on?" The Battle King who was holding on to Ouyang Xiaoyi immediately furrowed his brows and asked in puzzlement. However, just as he finished speaking, he felt a terrifying gust of wind whizzing past him. It was as if a figure had sped past him, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. Boom! A figure instantly pierced through more than half of the imperial city, piercing through countless houses and turning them into minced meat that piled up on the ground. "Oh, this way, I won't destroy the ground, woof," Blackie calmly said. A tyrannical might suddenly burst forth from its doggy eyes. In its eyes, that Battle King was just like an ant. At this moment, the Battle King who was holding on to Ouyang Xiaoyi finally remembered where he was, and his entire body began to tremble. This was a black-hearted store that had recently become famous within the imperial city, an alleyway guarded by a supreme beast. He originally thought that it was just a joke, but a doggy paw actually flicked the old man into minced meat. If anyone dared to say that this dog wasn't a supreme beast, then who would this daddy fight with? At this moment, the Battle King's intestines were green with regret. He never thought that these two brats would actually escape to this store. All of a sudden, the Battle King felt that his hand was empty. Ouyang Xiaoyi actually burst forth with true energy and stepped on his face. She broke free from his restraints and landed on the ground to escape. The Battle King's pupils shrank, and his heart suddenly felt a wave of terror. Then, a cute furry doggy paw tapped on his stomach. It was a gentle tap. Chapter 100. Rumble. When Song Tao rushed to the entrance of the alleyway where the store was located, a gust of wind instantly whizzed past him, causing his body to instantly stiffen. He vaguely saw a miserable figure within the gust of wind. What happened? Song Tao confusedly looked behind him. Then, with a loud noise, the entire ground began to tremble. Monstrous smoke and dust slowly rose from the ruins in the distance. Song Tao, who was standing at the entrance of the alleyway, felt a chill run down his spine. Oh, not bad. This saves me a lot of trouble. Bufang nodded in satisfaction. At the very least, the recently repaired limestone floor in the alleyway was not damaged by Black's paw again. My lord. Hurry up and run. That dog is too scary. While Song Tao was confused, the two battle kings were so frightened that they scrambled to escape. When they saw Song Tao, they spoke with fear in their eyes. Song Tao's heart sank. As expected, the mission had failed. Even the four battle kings were unable to capture Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Qin. How was he going to report back now? Song Tao was unwilling to leave just like that. So, he walked toward the alleyway and faced the terrifying big black dog that could send battle kings flying with a flick of its paw. Blackie indifferently glanced at Song Tao. When it saw the latter's vigilant expression, it immediately rolled its eyes and rolled its eyes. Striding like a cat, it lazily returned to the entrance of the store and lay down to rest. Ouyang Xiaoyi pulled Yang Qin into the store, completely ignoring Song Tao, who was standing at the entrance of the alleyway. A gust of cold wind blew past, bringing with it waves of chilliness. Young brat, this is the smelly boss's store that I told you about. Even though this boss isn't much of a person, the taste of his dishes is indescribable, Ouyang Xiaoyi said to Yang Qin after pulling Yang Qin into the store. Yang Qin looked around the store. A trace of disdain immediately appeared on his immature face. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, "This small and cramped store? The decorations are ordinary, the customers are also ordinary. How could there be any decent delicacies? You aren't lying to me, are you?" Yang Qin actually didn't believe such sincere words from me? Ouyang Xiaoyi immediately became anxious. She stared at Yang Qin with her big eyes and said, "Why would I lie to you? If I really lied to you, then this great ant will make the smelly boss apologize to you." At the side, Bufang was slightly taken aback, and a trace of doubt flashed across his face. "If you're lying, why am I the one apologizing? What logic? Humph. Do you think this young marquis will care about his apology?" Yang Qin glanced at Bufang and smiled in disdain. "You're just a chef. Do you think you can ascend to the heavens? You ignorant fellow, you will soon know what a stupid thing you have said." Ouyang Xiaoyi coldly smiled, then turned around and said to Bufang, "Smelly boss, give me a plate of sweet and sour ribs. He's going to die of hunger." Yang Qin curled his lips and glanced at the menu hanging on the wall. Then, his small eyes shrunk to the size of a black sesame seed. "This price is marked incorrectly, right? Why was it calculated according to crystals? Do you think these dishes are elixirs?" After looking at the price of the dishes, Yang Qin could not help but ridicule. Bufang was almost automatically immune to this kind of ridicule. He was too lazy to bother with it. "You can ridicule me all you want, it's not like I will lose a piece of meat from your ridicule. If you want to taste the dishes, you still have to order them. Won't you still have to bow down to the price of my dishes?" That was how confident he was when he had the skills. Song Tao was very unwilling, so he also stepped into the store. The first thing he saw was Yang Qin, who was coldly snorting in disdain. His eyes slightly lit up. "Young Marquis Yang, this is a very important person. I must capture him. What dish do you want to eat? Look at the menu yourself." Before Song Tao could say anything, a cold and aloof voice rang in his ears. Bufang expressionlessly looked at Song Tao and said while pointing at the menu behind him. Song Tao was taken aback. Then, he took a glance at the menu. His nostrils slightly widened and hot air whizzed out. Damn, isn't this a robbery? The black-hearted store was indeed worthy of its reputation. However, he was also unwilling to leave just like that. The fair and tender Ouyang Loli was not far away, and the Tsundra Yangchen was also standing in front of him. If Song Tao left just like that, it would be no different from giving up on 2 pieces of fragrant red braised meat when he was about to starve to death. Boss, give me a serving of egg-fried rice. Song Tao endured the heartache and ordered a dish of egg-fried rice that cost 1 crystal. His heart felt like it was bleeding. It was not easy to earn crystals these days. When Ouyang Xiaoyi heard Song Tao's order, she immediately disdainfully glanced at him and disdainfully snorted. Smelly boss, hurry up and cook my sweet and sour ribs that cost 50 crystals each. As the little princess of the Ouyang family, she would not lack crystals even if she lacked anything. What about you? What do you want to eat? Bufang looked at Yang Chen and asked. Since they have ordered, then give me a serving of Ice Heart Jade Urn wine, Yang Chen said while raising his chin. Bufang glanced at him and curled the corner of his mouth. He indifferently said, kids can't drink. Yang Chen's body suddenly stiffened. His small eyes widened as he stared straight at Bufang. Bufang expressionlessly looked back at him. Not long after, Yang Chen was defeated. How infuriating! Forget it, forget it. Give me a serving of red braised meat. Alright, please wait a moment. Bufang nodded before turning around and stepping into the kitchen. Song Tao carefully found a seat and sat down. His gaze could not help but look around. At the entrance of the kitchen, he saw a mechanical figure. Was that the puppet from this black-hearted store that could fight a 7th-grade battle saint head-on? Xiao Bai's plump head turned around mechanically. Its red mechanical eyes met Song Tao's small eyes, scaring the latter into hurriedly averting his gaze. Humph! If the taste of this store's dishes is really bad, I will definitely ruthlessly look down on them. How dare they charge such a high price when their dishes taste terrible? Also, I will advertise this to the entire imperial city and let everyone know that this is a scam. Yang Chen arrogantly said. Ouyang Xiaoyi rolled her big eyes. She could not be bothered with this arrogant little boy. Right now, she only wanted to eat the smelly boss's dishes. She had not eaten for an entire day and was starving. She had even lost weight. Yang Chen was still chattering away. However, the rich aroma of meat quickly drifted out from the kitchen. The aroma of meat slowly drifted over like silk brushing past one's face. It gave off a feeling of authenticity. Ouyang Xiaoyi raised her delicate nose and fiercely inhaled the aroma of meat. Her face was filled with happiness. This was the smell. This was the smell of the smelly boss. Not long after, a figure walked out from the darkness of the kitchen. Bufang's slender fingers were holding onto a porcelain bowl. On top of the bowl was an orange-red sweet and sour ribs that was overflowing with color. Steaming white steam and a rich aroma were emitted from the bowl and instantly rushed into the kitchen. Ouyang Xiaoyi was already a little impatient. Her big eyes were fixated on Bufang. Bufang placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Ouyang Xiaoyi, patted her head, and indifferently said, "Your sweet and sour ribs, eat slowly." Then, Bufang turned around and returned to the kitchen to continue cooking other dishes. The fragrance of the sweet and sour ribs was intoxicating. Just the fragrance alone caused Yang Chen, who had been chattering away at the side, to become sluggish on the spot. His pair of eyes were fixated on the orange-red meat. Even Song Tao could not help but be attracted. However, he was more concerned about how to get these 2 little fellows out of this store. Song Tao guiltily thought as he glanced at Xiao Bai when the latter's mechanical eyes once again turned around. Chapter 101. After eating a mouthful of egg-fried rice, Song Tao was completely immersed in it. He continuously scooped, chewed, and ate. He was completely conquered by the delicious aroma of the dish and had completely forgotten the purpose of coming to the store. Delicious! Song Tao put down the plate and licked his lip. He did not expect the egg-fried rice to be so delicious. One serving was not enough. It was a pity that the sweet and sour ribs actually cost 50 crystals. If he ordered this sweet and sour ribs, the 50 crystals would flow out of his pocket and Song Tao would not even have the appetite to eat. Inside the store, the unsatisfied Yang Chen ordered a few more dishes and ate happily. The little girl, on the other hand, ordered a hot fish head tofu soup and happily sipped the fish soup. At this moment, Yang Chen was already captivated by the intoxicating aroma emitted by the sweet and sour ribs. He could not even shift his gaze away. The orange-red luster of the sweet and sour ribs was really too tempting. He unconsciously felt an emptiness in his stomach and could not help but want to try one. After leaving the store, Song Tao did not go far. Instead, he found a comfortable spot a few meters away from the entrance of the alleyway and squatted down. He did not dare to make a move inside the store, but once he was outside, he could instantly capture the two kids and then leave. At least, he could not give that supreme dog the chance to make a move. Song Tao was immediately dumbfounded when he heard this. He, a dignified 6th-grade battle emperor, was actually treated as a stinky beggar? Did he have to be so miserable? Song Tao was slightly taken aback. Then, he recalled the rules on the menu and immediately felt a headache coming on. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that the reason he came to the store was not to eat, but to capture Yang Chen and Ouyang Xiaoyi. The two of them had no intention of leaving. I already said that the smelly boss's dishes are definitely the most delicious. Yang Chen swallowed the red braised meat into his mouth. The slight sweetness along with the rich aroma of the meat instantly invaded his entire mouth. It was as if Yang Chen's entire body was wrapped in the aroma of the meat. The first layer of fat venison was oily but not greasy. It was springy and had an excellent texture. When it came to the lean meat that was supposed to be tight, it was soft, tender, and smooth beyond Yang Chen's imagination. Do you want to eat it? Ouyang Xiaoyi used a pair of chopsticks to pick up a piece of sweet and sour ribs that was stained with orange sauce, and slightly waved it in front of Yang Chen as she spoke with a light smile. As a result, Yang Chen continued to pick up the meat with his chopstick. He couldn't stop at all. When Bufang walked out of the kitchen with the egg-fried rice, the bowl of braised pork was finished. Baji, baji. Ouyang Xiaoyi was amused as she looked at Yang Chen, who was forcing himself not to look at the sweet and sour ribs with his eyes closed. She couldn't stop laughing in her heart. Since you can't see, I'll use my voice to tempt you. Although the price of the egg-fried rice was not expensive and the cooking method was simple, it was undeniable that this simple dish emitted the strongest fragrance, because the egg itself was very fragrant when it was stir-fried. Yang Chen's eyes were fixated on the red braised pork in front of him. The meat was as transparent as agate, and under the illumination of the light, it emitted a rosy luster. It was too beautiful to behold, so exquisite that it was like a work of art, making people unable to bear to eat it. In his heart, he was wondering if he should order a serving of sweet and sour ribs, but he had already ordered the red braised pork, so he was a little hesitant. In the end, he gave up and decided to try the taste of the red braised pork first. However, in order to resist the temptation of that girl, Yang Chen forced himself to turn his head away from Ouyang Xiaoyi, who was happily eating the sweet and sour ribs. Owner Bu, give me another serving of egg-fried rice. Faced with such a delicacy, the naturally stingy Song Tao chose to compromise, and decided to order another serving of egg-fried rice. It was just a piece of meat, but it completely conquered Yang Chen. The smile on Ouyang Xiaoyi's eyes became even more curved. She happily picked up a piece of sweet and sour ribs and stuffed it into her mouth, chewing continuously with her cheeks bulging. However, in the end, the appetite in his stomach still won over the appreciation of beauty. Yang Chen grabbed the chopsticks, and carefully picked up a piece of red braised pork. The chopsticks slightly exerted force, and the red braised pork was squeezed until a slightly transparent oily juice flowed out, and the fragrance wafted over. No one could resist the fragrance of this egg-fried rice, not Song Tao, not Yang Chen. Under the temptation of the fragrance of the sweet and sour ribs, Yang Chen, who was struggling to endure, finally waited for Bu Fong to walk out of the kitchen. Looking at the plate of red braised pork in Bu Fong's hands, which was emitting hot steam like a red agate, Yang Chen became excited. To Yang Chen, this was simply the most unbearable torture. It was even more unbearable than letting him practice fist techniques 10 times in the snow. "Your red braised pork, please enjoy your meal," Bu Fong calmly said. Compared to Yang Chen's impatience, Bu Fong was neither hurried nor slow. The miserable fate of his 2 subordinates who were sent flying was still vivid in his mind. He did not dare to let that supreme dog make a move. Heavy snowflakes unknowingly floated down from the sky, swaying as they fell. The imperial city was once again covered in a layer of silver frost. "Let's change the dish. The egg-fried rice has already been ordered. You're not allowed to order anymore." Bu Fong indifferently glanced at him and said, "If you want to eat, go order it yourself." "It's mine." Ouyang Xiaoyi looked at Yang Chen's appearance of gulping saliva, and was delighted in her heart. She stuffed the sweet and sour ribs into her mouth with an appearance of her evil scheme succeeding, and her big eyes squinted like 2 cute crescent moons. Song Tao, who was at the side, had been observing the two. However, looking at the sweet and sour ribs in front of Ouyang Xiaoyi, he could not help but swallow his saliva as well. It was truly too fragrant. It was said that the Black-Hearted store was a scam, and their dishes were outrageously expensive, but there was a reason for it to be so expensive. Song Tao, who had long been tormented to the point of suffering, did not say a word as he picked up the blue and white porcelain spoon and started to scoop up the rice. Once he scooped up the rice, the aroma of the egg and rice instantly erupted. White steam rose up and enveloped Song Tao's face, causing him to be completely intoxicated. Under the dumbstruck gaze of Yang Chen and Ouyang Xiaoyi, the bowl of egg-fried rice was cleanly eaten in a short while. Not a single grain of rice was left on the plate. At the entrance of the alleyway, Song Tao was squatting motionlessly. His body was already covered in a thick layer of snow, and when he slightly shook his body, snow would fall off. Blackie, who was lying at the entrance, rolled its eyes. It was speechless at Song Tao's actions. Was this human stupid? Bu Fong looked at Song Tao with a face full of puzzlement. Didn't this bro say he wanted to order dishes? Yang Chen was very angry. He knew that this brat definitely did not have good intentions. However, he had to admit that the aroma was really fragrant. He had never smelled such an intoxicating aroma of meat before. "Your egg-fried rice, please enjoy." Bu Fong placed the egg-fried rice that seemed to be emitting a golden brilliance in front of Song Tao as he indifferently said. Qian Bao, who was wearing a brocade robe and a fox fur cloak, walked to the entrance of the alleyway with a chef from the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Coincidentally, he saw Song Tao hiding and shivering at the entrance of the alleyway. Qian Bao immediately waved his hand in disgust. Where did this stinky beggar come from? Cram, don't block the way. Therefore, Song Tao resisted the temptation and carefully took out a crystal from his pocket. With a face full of reluctance, he placed it on the table, then turned around and left. It's really delicious. Yang Chen muttered in a daze as he looked at the plate of red braised meat in disbelief. There was actually such a delicious red braised meat in this world. The difference between the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's red braised spirit pork and this dish was like the difference between heaven and earth. Song Tao also suspected that he was stupid. However, he had no choice. In order to complete the mission, he could only make such a fearless sacrifice. Chapter 102. What are you staring at? Are you still not convinced? Have you never seen a rich person before? Qian Bao was immediately displeased when he saw the stinky beggar squatting in the corner glaring at him. He flung his fox fur cloak and coldly berated him. Song Tao was a little speechless. He pursed his lips and looked at Qian Bao. Where did this guy get the courage to be so arrogant in front of him? Even though his current appearance was indeed a little disheveled, he was still a 6th-grade battle emperor. A middle-aged chef behind Qian Bao also glanced at Song Tao in disgust. He waved his hand and said, "It's indeed a small restaurant in an alley. No wonder there are so few customers. It's because all the customers are filthy and stinky beggars. It's simply polluting the mood of eating. Master Zhao, if you can help our Immortal Phoenix restaurant regain its dignity this time, I'll immediately raise your salary by 1,000 gold coins when we return. I guarantee you'll have a blissful spring festival." Qian Bao glanced at Master Zhao and chuckled. This Master Zhao was the chef with the best knife skills in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Qian Bao knew that no one in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant could compare to the taste of the Black-Hearted Store's dishes. Even though he had never tasted them before, the fact that they were acknowledged by the old emperor meant that they were definitely at the same level as the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's roasted flour duck. Therefore, it was too difficult to defeat the Black-Hearted Store in terms of taste. Since he could not defeat the Black-Hearted Store in terms of taste, he could only defeat them in terms of knife skills. Therefore, Qian Bao brought along the chef with him who was the best in knife skills. A salary of 1,000 gold coins. Master Zhao's eyes immediately lit up and the corners of his mouth curled up into a silly smile. 1,000 gold coins was already a huge sum of money for him. This was about the same amount of salary he would receive after working hard for a year. "No problem, boss. Leave it to me. I'll definitely use my knife skills to ruthlessly destroy the face of that little restaurant. I'll let them understand what it means to be a true chef," Master Zhao solemnly vowed as he patted his chest. I have high hopes for you," Qian Bao said with a smile. Then, the two of them walked past Song Tao in disgust and planned to head into the alleyway. Although they didn't care about Song Tao was a little unhappy with them. Back in the Black-Hearted Store, Song Tao felt very vexed because of that supreme dog. Now that he had left the store, there were actually 2 blind people who dared to jump in front of him and even ridiculed him as a beggar. Have you ever King seen that stinking beggar as a battle emperor? Qian Bao felt a hand pressing down on his shoulder. He was slightly startled, then felt his entire body being suppressed by an imposing aura, rendering him unable to move. Damn! What are you trying to do, you stinking beggar? Are you trying to take advantage of me? Get your filthy hands off me! When Master Zhao saw Song Tao's hand patting Qian Bao's shoulder, he immediately shouted. Then, he reached out his hand to grab Song Tao. Song Tao's body shook, and his real qi burst out in an instant, blowing away the snow that covered his body. His hair fluttered under the influence of his real qi. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, and his clothes were fluttering. Master Zhao's hand, which had just reached out, immediately trembled. What the hell? How did a stinking beggar turn into a cultivator in an instant? Song Tao angrily glared at Master Zhao and shouted, "Scram!" His voice was like rolling thunder, surging and surging. Master Zhao was immediately frightened to the point of continuously taking several steps back. Both of his legs were trembling. This power was too terrifying. Even though Master Zhao had a cultivation level, he was only a 2nd-grade battlemaster. Under the terrifying pressure of a 6th-grade battle emperor, he almost wet his pants and lay on the ground. Qian Bao was still calm. After all, he was someone who had seen the world, so his reaction was not as unbearable as Master Zhao's. I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. It is my fault for offending you. I am the owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. I am willing to prepare a table full of delicacies for you as an apology. Please calm your anger, Qian Bao said as his body slightly trembled. Song Tao was originally planning to slap these two to death. However, when he heard Qian Bao say that he was the owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, he immediately paused and dispersed his real qi. Since they are from the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, then forget about it. If it wasn't for the fact that you are from the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, I would have already slapped you to death, Song Tao coldly said as the true energy on his body gradually receded. Then, he regained his calm appearance. I heard from you that you are going to that black-hearted store to challenge Owner Bu, right? Qian Bao was startled for a moment and hurriedly nodded. That's right. We are indeed going to challenge Owner Bu. However, if you don't allow it, we will turn back now. Even though Master Zhao's heart ached for the 1,000 gold coins, after thinking about it, 1,000 gold coins was nothing compared to his life. Therefore, he continuously nodded his head. Why are we going back? Let's compete. We have to compete. Furthermore, we have to compete outside. Song Tao coldly smiled as he rolled his eyes. Qian Bao and Master Zhao were startled for a moment. They looked at each other and thought, so this stinky beggar. Oh, this lord isn't from the black-hearted store. Aren't the two of you going to compete with Owner Bu in cutting skills? Wouldn't it be fairer to set the location of the competition at the entrance of this alleyway? Song Tao said. What is the difference? It's actually not easy to display cutting skills in the snow on such a cold day. Master Zhao silently cursed in his heart. Just do what I tell you to do. Do you have a problem with that? Song Tao coldly said as he glared at Master Zhao. He did not dare to act presumptuously in the store because the other party had the supreme dog. However, could he not act pretentious in front of two ants like them? Helpless, Qian Bao could only agree to Song Tao's idea in the end. Then, under Song Tao's gaze, the two of them slowly walked toward Bufang's store. Song Tao was extremely satisfied with his quick-wittedness. It's impossible to make a move in the store. However, it's much easier at the entrance of this alleyway. Even if the supreme dog makes a move, I can still escape. Furthermore, I can even kidnap those two brats. Qian Bao rubbed his hands together and exhaled a breath of white air. Then, he stepped into Bufang's store. Once he entered the store, it was as if he had stepped into a warm world. Outside, it was snowing heavily, while inside the store, it was as if spring had bloomed. A rich aroma slowly flowed within the store. The aroma of the fish soup and the mellow aroma of the meat. Qian Bao was instantly attracted by the aroma and involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva. As expected, only the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's roasted flour duck could compare to this aroma. Master Zhao was also a chef. The moment he smelled the aroma of the dish, he knew that if they were to compete in culinary skills, he would definitely lose. He would lose to the point where he would not even have the ability to retaliate. The difference between the two of them was too great. It's you? What would you like to eat? Bufang recognized Qian Bao. Previously, he had gone to the other party's Immortal Phoenix restaurant to find fault with them. He went from the first floor all the way to the third floor and criticized the other party's dishes to the point where there was nothing good about them. Naturally, he was no stranger to the owner. He did not expect that Qian Bao would actually come to his store. Owner Bu, you should still remember me. That day, Owner Bu's evaluation of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's dishes greatly benefited me. Many of the dishes have indeed tasted much better after being improved. However, as we often say, courtesy demands reciprocity. Today, I have brought along the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's #1 signature chef to seek advice from you. Qian Bao's words sounded dignified, but in reality, he was trying to convey one thing. I am here to find fault with you today. Since you have found fault with me, I will seek revenge. Otherwise, I will lose face. Seek advice. Bufang expressionlessly glanced at Qian Bao and conveniently glanced at Master Zhao, who was standing behind Qian Bao. Then, the corners of his mouth curled downwards as he said, "If all of your dishes are based on the chef's standards from the last time, then I will not accept your advice because you are not qualified." Not qualified. The muscles on Master Zhao's face twitched. However, he was powerless to refute Bufang. The rich aroma lingering in the air caused him to lose the slightest bit of confidence. However, compared to Master Zhao's desolate expression, Qian Bao was much calmer. He scanned the store and grinned as he said, "Owner Bu, we are not here to seek advice on dishes. Today we are here to seek advice on knife skills." Master Zhao's heart shook. Then, he proudly raised his head and said, "That's right. Today, we are here to seek advice on Owner Bu's knife skills." Chapter 103. Master Zhao was very confident. He had extraordinary confidence in his knife skills. This was because he had spent more than 10 years on his knife skills. Ever since he was an apprentice chef, he had been constantly swinging his kitchen knife to process ingredients every day. Other people could say that his dishes were not delicious, but they could not say that his knife skills were bad. That would make him feel that it was an insult to his 10 years of knife skills training. It was precisely because of this confidence and solid knife skills that Master Zhao stood out from the many capable chefs of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant and was chosen by Qian Bao to challenge Bufang. Master Zhao proudly looked at Bufang. He did not believe that the young man in front of him could beat him in knife skills. Not only did knife skills require talent, it also required continuous hard work. Master Zhao felt that he was someone who had both talent and hard work. On the side, Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chern had also finished eating the dishes in their hands and were curiously watching this lively scene. Ouyang Xiaoyi was even more excited. Last time, the smelly boss almost wiped out the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Now, they were not convinced and came looking for trouble. This little girl was purely watching a show and was not afraid of things getting out of hand. Her big eyes blinked as she looked at Bufang. She wanted to see how the smelly boss would deal with this matter. Honestly speaking, Bufang was really not interested in things like dueling and exchanging pointers. He only wanted to peacefully cook his dishes, open his business, earn crystals, and raise his cultivation level. It was that simple and pure, without too many complicated things. Last time, if it was not for the system's request, Bufang would not even be bothered to step into the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Knife skills? Why should I compete with you? Not interested. Bufang expressionlessly raised the corner of his mouth. He turned around and walked toward the kitchen. He could not be bothered with Qian Bao and Master Zhao. Qian Bao was immediately startled. He did not expect Bufang to actually refuse. However, his eyes quickly lit up. Refuse? Doesn't that mean he has a guilty conscience? This Owner Bu's knife skills are definitely not good. Otherwise, why would he refuse the challenge? Because he clearly knows he will lose, that's why he refused. The more he thought about it, the more excited Qian Bao became. He could not let Bufang reject the challenge, because he felt that he had found Bufang's weakness. Owner Bu, don't you think this is a little unreasonable? Did I, Qian Bao, say anything when you came to my Phoenix Immortal restaurant to find trouble? Didn't I generously allow you to taste my delicacies? Today, I came here with the intention of exchanging pointers, but Owner Bu rejected me. This is a bit unkind. Could it be that Owner Bu has a guilty conscience? Are you aware that your knife skills are inferior to this great chef? Qian Bao's facial muscles squeezed together as he revealed a smile. His voice had a very annoying tone, which made people feel very uncomfortable after hearing it. At least, Ouyang Xiaoyi, who was originally watching the show, was so angry that the roots of her teeth itched. What did he mean by unkind? What was a guilty conscience? With Owner Bu's culinary skills, would he have a guilty conscience? It's not a guilty conscience or unkind, It's just that even if it's a competition of knife skills, your chef is not qualified to compete with me. Since he's not qualified, why should I compete with him? Bufang stopped in his tracks, turned his head and indifferently said. There was not the slightest anger in his tone, as if he was merely stating a fact. Master Zhao was instantly enraged. I'm not qualified? I am the #1 knife skill in the Phoenix Immortal restaurant, and you actually said that I'm not qualified? Brat, you're really arrogant. Unfortunately, your knife skills are not the more arrogant you are. We will only know if you're qualified after we compete. If you say you're not qualified, then you're not qualified. Who do you think you are? Master Zhao coldly ridiculed. Qian Bao stood up at the right time and said with a smile, Owner Bu, last time, you lost a lot of face at the Immortal Phoenix Immortal restaurant. This time we can't lose out. As long as you admit that your knife skills are inferior to the Immortal Phoenix Immortal restaurant chef, we will forget about this matter. How about it? Bufang expressionlessly looked at Qian Bao. He thought, was there something wrong with this guy's head? He already said that the chef was not qualified to challenge his knife skills, yet Qian Bao actually wanted him to admit that his knife skills were inferior. What a joke! Bufang's expression also turned cold. Since you want to court death, I'll grant your wish. Abrupt mission. The host agrees to the knife skills challenge arranged by Qian Bao against the Immortal Phoenix Immortal Restaurant's chef and completely crush him. As the saying goes, a scholar can be killed but not humiliated. A chef's knife skills are not to be humiliated. Young man, use your blinding knife skills to teach him a lesson. Mission reward: Meteor Knife Skill Advancement. Just as Bufang was about to agree to the other party's challenge, the system's solemn and earnest voice rang out in Bufang's mind. Even though the system was still solemn, Bufang seemed to be able to feel the anger contained within the system's mission. A strange expression appeared on his stiff face. Bufang indifferently looked at Qian Bao and Master Zhao. Since the system had already issued a mission, it would be unreasonable for him to refuse. Since that's the case, I'll accept it. Sure, I agree to your challenge. However, wait until my business hours are over, Bufang indifferently said. The smile on Qian Bao's face froze and slowly disappeared. He seriously said, Owner Bu, does this mean you agree? Bufang nodded expressionlessly. Then, can I decide the location of the challenge? Qian Bao said. He did not forget the instructions Song Tao gave him. Thinking about the terrifying aura on Song Tao's body, he decided to do as Song Tao said. Whatever. Bufang could not be bothered to say anything else. He turned around and entered the kitchen. Master Zhao and Qian Bao looked at each other and simultaneously revealed a sinister smile. Then, Qian Bao shouted toward the kitchen, Owner Bu, I'll be leaving first. When your business hours are over, I'll send someone to arrange the challenge. Okay. Bufang's cold voice came from the kitchen. Qian Bao and Master Zhao immediately left Bufang's store in high spirits and went to prepare the items for the challenge. Once Qian Bao and the others left, Ouyang Xiaoyi ran to the kitchen window and asked Bufang, Smelly boss, did you really agree to a knife skill competition? Is your knife skill up to par? Bufang raised his head and glanced at Ouyang Xiaoyi. Then, a wisp of green smoke curled around his hand and a pitch-black kitchen knife appeared. Bufang's 5 fingers nimbly moved and the kitchen knife suddenly moved around in Bufang's hand as if it had a life of its own. When had Ouyang Xiaoyi ever seen such a magnificent operation? Her eyes were almost popping out of their sockets. She suddenly felt that her previous worries were simply a joke. The smelly boss was a monster. His culinary skills were so good, how could his knife skill be bad? She could almost imagine the outcome of the challenge. The Immortal Phoenix restaurant's owner's expression would definitely become extremely ugly. She was looking forward to the smelly boss slapping someone's face the most. The opening hours quickly ended. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen were not in a hurry to leave. They were also looking forward to this challenge. Qian Bao was quite efficient. Soon, someone came to inform Bu Fong of the location of the challenge. However, the location of the location caused Bu Fong to be slightly startled. At the entrance of the alleyway? Bu Fong puzzledly asked. That's right. The person who came to report nodded with absolute certainty. Bu Fong did not say anything. He put on a fur coat and walked out of the store. At this moment, the entrance of the alleyway was bustling with activity. The alleyway, which was usually sparsely populated, was currently crowded with pedestrians. 2 large tables were placed on top of it and various kinds of ingredients were placed on top of them. Master Zhao, who was wearing a chef's robe, was standing in front of a table. On his table, there was a huge knife rack filled with all kinds of kitchen knives. Every single one of them was emitting a sharp blade light. Chapter 104. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen followed closely behind Bu Fong and curiously looked at the bustling alleyway. The crowd surrounding the alleyway made Ouyang Xiaoyi quite excited. The owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was indeed extraordinary. His battle had actually attracted so many people. Was he planning to let the entire imperial city know about it? Qian Bao stood at the alleyway with a smile on his face. He was very happy as he looked at the surrounding crowd of onlookers. With so many people, once the news of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's chef defeating the Black-Hearted store's owner got out, the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's reputation would become even more popular in the imperial city. At that time, more and more people would come to eat at the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Owner Bu, you're finally here. Look, there are so many people paying attention to this knife skill competition. Owner Bu, don't go easy on me, Qian Bao said to Bu Fong with a smile on his face. Bu Fong gave him a meaningful glance. Bu Fong clearly knew what Qian Bao was planning. Wasn't he planning to use him as a stepping stone to make the Immortal Phoenix restaurant famous? There was actually nothing wrong with this idea because the store's reputation had been extremely popular in the imperial city recently. If the Immortal Phoenix restaurant could obtain victory in the competition, its reputation would rise to another level. However, Qian Bao was certain that Master Zhao's knife skill would be able to defeat Bu Fong. Bu Fong nodded and walked toward one of the tables. There were many fresh ingredients placed on the table. Heavy snowflakes were fluttering down from the sky and wrapped around the ingredient. When Master Zhao saw Bu Fong, he brandished a broad-headed kitchen knife, as if to demonstrate his power. The shiny kitchen knife was constantly spinning in his hand and the blade was reflecting light. The whistling sound caused by the spinning kitchen knife suddenly became very obvious in the alleyway. The originally noisy crowd in the surroundings could not help but quiet down as they held their breaths to watch the knife skill competition between the two. Owner Bu, I have trained my knife skill hard for more than 10 years. Today, I will definitely not go easy on you. I will give it my all to compete with you, Master Zhao said. Master Zhao said. Then, he fiercely slammed the table, and a round little potato on the table was sent flying into the air. Master Zhao's eyes sharpened. The kitchen knife in his hand instantly slashed out. The kitchen knife kept spinning in the air, giving off the sound of cutting ingredient. With a tearing sound, Master Zhao's kitchen knife slashed out horizontally and finally stopped steadily in front of him. Strips of perfectly sliced potatoes were stacked on the back of the kitchen knife. This move was very beautiful. At the very least, the passers-by in the surroundings were shocked by this move. They all clapped and cheered. Master Zhao placed the shredded potatoes on the plate. With a confident smile on his face, he looked at Bu Fong provocatively. Bu Fong was expressionless. He was not the least bit shocked by Master Zhao's action of cutting potatoes in midair. Ouyang Xiaoyi, who was standing beside Bu Fong, snorted at Master Zhao's provocative gaze. Tell me, how are we going to compete? I still need to go back to sleep after this, Bu Fong said calmly. His voice was as calm as still water. However, when the others heard Bu Fong's calm words, they could tell that he was lacking in confidence. Immediately, The gazes of many people toward Bufang were filled with playfulness and ridicule. There were even boos coming from the crowd. Qian Bao was very happy as he watched this scene. The more ruthlessly he could trample on Owner Bu, the better the reputation of his Immortal Phoenix restaurant would be. Let's compete in knife skills. We will compete in 3 categories: speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. The so-called speed refers to the speed at which you cut the ingredient. Owner Bu should be very clear about this. Accuracy refers to the accuracy and precision when cutting the ingredient. Ruthlessness refers to the dissection of meat ingredient. Today we will compete in these 3 categories, Master Zhao solemnly said to Bufang after he placed the kitchen knife on the chopping board. Bufang nodded. He was not surprised in the slightest. This was the only way to compete in knife skills. Let's begin, Bufang said. Very well. Then I will start with the first category. There are 100 radishes prepared here. Let's calculate the time needed to finish cutting these 100 radishes to determine the winner. How about it? Master Zhao said. Cutting radishes again. Bufang glanced at the pile of radishes on the table. The corners of his mouth twitched and he softly agreed. Then watch carefully, Owner Bu. I will start first. When Master Zhao heard Bufang agree, his fighting spirit immediately soared. The chef robe on his body fluttered under his aura. Master Zhao hooked his hand and took out another kitchen knife. He actually picked up 2 kitchen knives at the same time to cut the radishes. First, his kitchen knife gently moved, grabbing a radish and placing it on the chopping board. Then, he quickly chopped down with both knives. His speed was extremely fast and his rhythm was clear. In less than a breath's time, the radish was neatly cut into pieces. After he finished cutting one radish, Master Zhao was already preparing the second one. Master Zhao was indeed a chef who had practiced knife skills for more than 10 years. His understanding and mastery of knife skills had already reached a realm that many chefs could not compare to. Just by using 2 knives, it was already extremely difficult for an ordinary person to accurately cut radishes. Furthermore, his speed was so fast that it was almost too much for the eyes to take in. The 100 radishes were all accurately cut into pieces by Master Zhao in less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea. When the last piece of radish was cut, Master Zhao simultaneously chopped down on the chopping board with both knives. He took a step back and let out a long breath. His forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. Bursts of cheers and exclamations instantly rang out around him. This greatly satisfied Master Zhao's vanity. He believed that with this kind of knife skills, Bufang would definitely not be able to compare. Owner Bu, it's your turn, Master Zhao aggressively said. Bufang gave him a glance and imperceptibly shook his head as he lightly exhaled. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. The system wants to teach you how to be a person. If I don't show some tricks, it won't be justifiable, Bufang muttered. Then, he did not use the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. Instead, he took out an ordinary kitchen knife. After twirling the knife around, Bufang lightly flicked the edge of the knife and then nodded. Then let's start the countdown, Qian Bao said with a smile. His face was filled with confidence. Master Zhao could be said to have exceeded his limits today. His performance was extremely impressive. Oh, let's begin, Bufang simply said. Then, he stretched out his hand. True energy surged into his palm, and he suddenly slammed it on the table. He controlled the true energy so that the table would not be destroyed. Instead, the radishes on the table were sent flying into the air. Buzz! In that instant, Bufang's eyes became as sharp as an eagle's eyes. His entire aura changed in an instant. 100 radishes floated in the air. Then, the kitchen knife in Bufang's hand began to rotate automatically. The speed of the rotation sent chills down everyone's spine. That kitchen knife seemed to have turned into a ray of light as it instantly slashed down. Splatter! Splatter! Everyone was dumbfounded. Then, they looked at the scene in front of them with a face full of disbelief. In their field of vision, everything around them seemed to have disappeared. The only thing left were the 100 radishes floating in the air and streams of light exploding out from the darkness. Those streams of light were like shooting stars streaking across the night sky as they streaked across the radishes. When the darkness dissipated, everyone's field of vision was restored. Then, they realized that the 100 radishes floating in the air had all exploded. Each piece was cut into cube-sized diced radishes. They were even more exquisite than Master Zhao's. Rumble. As if it was raining radishes, Bufang single-handedly carried a basket. The falling radishes fell into the basket one after another. When the last radish landed on the basket, it tumbled for a while before calming down. Bufang had completed the first segment of the competition. The time taken was 4 breaths. This was counting the time it took for the radishes to fall into the basket. The alleyway instantly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at Bufang. The confident smile on Master Zhao's face had long since frozen. He looked as comical as a clown. Looking at Bufang's calm expression, Master Zhao felt as if 10,000 roasted pigs were galloping through his heart. Damn it! Are you King knife skills? You must be using a cheat, right? Chapter 105. Placing the basket filled with sliced radishes on the table, Bufang calmly glanced at Master Zhao. The latter was in a state of complete shock. His mouth was wide open and his face was filled with disbelief. To actually compete in cutting radishes with him, Bufang did not know what to say. The method he used to practice his meteor cutting technique was to cut radishes. Furthermore, he used a custom-made super-heavy kitchen knife to cut radishes. Under such circumstances, the cutting technique he practiced was naturally extraordinary. Furthermore, when it came to cutting radishes, Bufang was even more skillful and skillful. Every day, he had to cut 1,000 radishes. For him, these 100 radishes could be easily finished within 5 breaths even with his eyes closed. Therefore, if he had to blame someone, he could only blame Master Zhao for choosing a method that was most beneficial to Bufang. Let's proceed to the second round, Bufang calmly said. Bufang calmly said. His voice, which was as calm as an ancient well, woke everyone up from their shock. How did you do it? This is impossible. I have painstakingly practiced my cutting technique for more than 10 years and I can't even beat a brat like you. Master Zhao muttered as he shook his head with a despondent expression. Bufang placed the ordinary kitchen knife in his hand on the chopping board. His face was expressionless as he gestured for Master Zhao to take a look at the kitchen knife he had used before. Master Zhao's pupils instantly constricted as his gaze landed on the kitchen knife. He saw that the edge of the kitchen knife was completely curled up and there were even some cracks on the body of the knife. It seemed to be unable to withstand the heavy load. How could one not have gone through arduous practice to achieve this level of cutting technique? You have painstakingly practiced your cutting technique for more than 10 years and I have also painstakingly practiced my cutting technique. It's just that the method of practice is different, Bufang calmly said. Master Zhao was stunned for a moment. Then, he glanced at Bufang and his entire being became solemn. He nodded his head and regained his vigor. Thank you, Owner Bu, for your guidance. Let's continue. I will do my best, Master Zhao said. After all, this was a battle where his dignity as a chef was at stake. He could not just give up like this. The second round is to test the accuracy of knife skills. We have prepared 2 pieces of tofu. Owner Bu and Master Zhao will cut the tofu into shreds. The finer the shreds, the winner will be the one who cuts them. At this moment, Qian Bao had lost his previous confidence. The meteor cutting skill displayed by Bufang had completely crushed his confidence. Bufang nodded. Cut tofu? This was indeed a way to test one's knife skills. Because the tofu was very tender, it had a very strict requirement of strength and precision. Once there was a mistake, the entire tofu would fall apart. Master Zhao did not say anything. Instead, he picked up a slightly narrow kitchen knife and walked toward the piece of tofu on the chopping board with an incomparably serious expression. The tofu was white, smooth, and extremely fragile. It was as if it would break at the slightest touch. Because the temperature was relatively low, the tofu had just been taken out, and it was still emitting some heat. Cutting the tofu was a technical task. Therefore, Master Zhao was completely immersed in it. He gathered all of his energy on the kitchen knife and started cutting the tofu. While Master Zhao was cutting the tofu, Bufang also took out an ordinary kitchen knife. This kitchen knife was not much different from the previous one, it was still the same kind of wide kitchen knife. His gaze landed on the tofu. After glancing at Master Zhao, who was completely focused and careful, the corners of his mouth slightly twitched. After experiencing the first round of the competition, the surrounding passers-by no longer blindly admired Master Zhao. Many of them were paying attention to Bufang's movements. However, very quickly, every one of their faces once again revealed bewildered expressions. They were incomparably shocked. Facing the tender and delicate tofu, Bufang did not choose to be as careful as Master Zhao. It was as if he was treating the tofu as a radish. He twirled the kitchen knife with his fingers, twirled it, and then fiercely cut the delicate tofu. Just like the scene from before when he was cutting the radish, as the knife flashed, it was as if countless meteors were streaking across the darkness. The white and tender tofu immediately began to slightly tremble. After another 4 breaths of time, Bufang had already finished cutting the tofu. He put away the kitchen knife and looked at the tofu in front of him. The tofu was still in perfect condition, as if it had not been cut at all. What's going on? Nothing happened to the tofu? Some people could not help but discuss in low voices. After all, seeing was believing. However, the tofu in front of them was completely the same as before. Don't be anxious, Bufang calmly said, suppressing the discussions in the surroundings. He used his hand to carefully lift up the spotless white and warm tofu and placed it into a transparent bowl that had been prepared by Bufang. This bowl was prepared by Qianbao, and it allowed one to observe the appearance of the tofu from 360 degrees without any blind spots. Bufang held the tofu in his hand and carefully placed it into the bowl. Then, he suddenly released his hand and pulled it out from the bowl without making a single splash. In the next moment, the tofu in the transparent bowl underwent an incredible transformation. The transformation was carried out silently. Strand after strand of fine, fluff-like tofu floated in the water like a flower bud, quietly blooming. The slender tofu strands were its petals. This was the first layer. Immediately after, the second layer of tofu petals bloomed at different angles. Every strand was incomparably fine as it floated in the water. The bottom of the tofu seemed to be naturally elongated. Then, under the force of the water, the tofu strands rose up one after another, layer after layer, as if there were 1,000 layers of flowers. 1,000-layer tofu flower, please enjoy. Bufang's fingers moved slightly, and the kitchen knife instantly landed on the chopping board as he calmly said to the crowd, 1,000-layer tofu flower. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. A cube of tofu could actually be cut into such a beautiful tofu flower. The slender petals were even more delicate than fluff, as if they would break at the slightest touch. The sunlight shone down, passing through the transparent bowl and shining on the floating 1,000-layer tofu flower. The flower roots seemed to be fluttering in the wind, and it was extremely beautiful. Qianbao's legs were a little weak. Once this tofu flower appeared, who could compete with it? There was no way to compete with it. It turned out that it was not that Bufang did not know how to use a knife, but that he did not want to compete with him. Qianbao could not help but smile bitterly. He was actually shamelessly looking for trouble, and he was really stupid. The passers-by surrounding the transparent bowl continuously let out cries of surprise, and continuously praised the beautiful tofu flower. They had already been completely conquered by it. Master Zhao, who was at the side, was still meticulously using the kitchen knife in his hand to cut the tofu. He did not give up just like that, and he was not the slightest bit affected by the outside world. He was completely focused on completing the work in his hand. Bufang nodded, and he could not help but feel admiration for this Master Zhao. This was a chef who truly respected his own dishes. After about 10 minutes, Master Zhao finished his work and placed it into the transparent bowl. Every strand of tofu strand was extremely thin. Even though it could not be compared to the 1,000-layer tofu flour, it was already considered the pinnacle of knife skills. Owner Bu, I admit that my skills are not as good as yours, and I have lost. There is no need to compete in the third round. Compared to Owner Bu's knife skills, I am far too lacking, and I still need to work hard, Master Zhao said to Bufang, feeling helpless and bitter. Bufang nodded, and the system in his mind had already notified him that he had completed the quest. Qian Bao was defeated this time. He was also very depressed in his heart when he stuck his face in front of Bufang. Both Bufang's culinary skills and knife skills were so monstrous that it was simply unimaginable. However, the hidden dragon continent was vast and boundless, so it was normal for some monstrous people to appear. Owner Bu's culinary skills are so outstanding, and his knife skills are also so sharp. It is truly a waste of talent to condescend to this small store. I wonder if Owner Bu is interested in joining my Immortal Phoenix restaurant? We can work together, and with Owner Bu's culinary skills and the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's reputation, you will definitely be famous throughout the entire continent. The thought of recruiting Bufang arose in Qian Bao's mind. Not interested. It was obvious that Bufang was very decisive in his refusal. Even the emperor was mercilessly rejected by him, so what could a mere Immortal Phoenix restaurant do? Ouyang Xiaoyi was lying in front of the transparent bowl, and her big eyes were filled with amazement as she looked at the 1,000-layer tofu flour that seemed to have been cut by the gods. Yang Chun was also very surprised. Was this really something that could be done with a kitchen knife? The world of chefs was indeed unfathomable. Suddenly, a palm slapped down on their shoulders. The two of them were startled at the same time, and then they felt the true energy in their bodies being suppressed by a powerful pressure, and they were completely unable to move. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen looked at each other, and both thought to themselves, "Oh no." Chapter 106. A mountain-like pressure suddenly landed on Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen, causing their bodies to stiffen. The true energy within their bodies seemed to have been frozen, and they were completely unable to circulate it. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen raised their heads with great difficulty and saw Song Tao standing behind them, looking down at them from above. An obscure light flickered in Song Tao's eyes. True energy continuously appeared beneath his eyes, and a frightening pressure flowed from his body. Song Tao was, after all, a 6th-grade battle emperor. His strength was extremely valiant, and he was not someone that Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen could handle. "I've finally caught you too," Song Tao sneered. With one hand on each of their shoulders, he controlled the two of them to walk out like puppets. Song Tao was very excited. He could finally complete the Lord's mission. It was truly not easy. If the owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant had not come to challenge Bufang, he would not have found such a good opportunity to make a move. Each of these two brats was more important than the other. Ouyang Xiaoyi was the little princess of the Ouyang family. Needless to say, her status was noble. She was also the most important hindrance to the Ouyang family. On the other hand, Yang Chen was the young marquis of the Yang family and the only remaining heir of the Yang family. For the Yang family, he was a treasure among treasures. As long as he could control these two brats, he would have a bargaining chip to negotiate with the Ouyang and Yang families. While everyone was intoxicated by the beauty of the thousand-layer tofu flower, Song Tao quietly grabbed Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen and planned to leave. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen's bodies were being controlled by Song Tao's true energy. They could not even shout. Their eyes were filled with anxiety, but there was nothing they could do. "Hey, where are you taking them?" Bufang puzzledly asked Song Tao through the crowd. Song Tao's body immediately stiffened. He originally thought that he would not be discovered, but in the end, he was still discovered by Bufang. He immediately cursed inwardly. This owner Bu had the trump card of a supreme beast. It was better for him to leave first. Song Tao glanced at Bufang. Then, his palms on Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen's shoulders turned into claws. He lifted them up and clamped them under his armpits. True energy gushed out from his feet as he planned to leave. Bufang understood that this guy was blatantly abducting and selling children. This was simply intolerable. Bufang narrowed his eyes and raised one hand. The true energy within his body burst forth, and green smoke curled around his palm. Then, the pitch-black golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand, and he ruthlessly smashed it toward the leaping Song Tao. The kitchen knife was connected to Bufang's true qi, so it was connected to Bufang's mind, so it was very fast. Song Tao took a glance behind him, and saw Bufang actually throwing a kitchen knife at him. The corner of his mouth immediately twitched and revealed a disdainful expression. He was a dignified 6th-grade battle emperor. How could he be intercepted by a kitchen knife? Even though you, Owner Bu, are pretty good at cooking, when it comes to fighting, a mere 4th-grade battle spirit is simply not enough. Song Tao grabbed a person in each of his hands, so he leaped up and kicked at the simple and unadorned pitch-black kitchen knife. He did not put this kitchen knife in his eyes at all. It was just a kitchen knife. Could it be a divine weapon? The dragon bone kitchen knife finally made contact with the sole of Song Tao's foot. Song Tao froze. He suddenly realized that the true energy he had condensed on his foot was completely unable to provide any protection. Then, the kitchen knife ruthlessly chopped into his foot, causing blood to spurt out. "Damn it!" Song Tao let out a blood-curdling scream. A trace of fear appeared on his face, and his gaze toward Bufang was already filled with terror. What the hell? That kitchen knife was actually able to cut through the true energy barrier of a 6th-grade battle emperor? Are you King kidding me? Song Tao did not dare to stay any longer. The sole of his foot was almost sliced off by the dragon bone kitchen knife. True energy burst forth from his body in an attempt to escape. He did not want to face Bufang in the slightest. However, just as Song Tao soared into the sky, a charming shout full of heroic spirit came from afar. Even though the voice belonged to a woman, it was surging like thunder. Song Tao was startled for a moment. Then, his pupils constricted and his entire body became vigilant. He saw a graceful figure rapidly approaching from afar. A red-tasseled spear was thrust out like a dragon, seemingly about to tear the air apart as its target was Song Tao. "How dare you! Put down the young duke!" The red-tasseled spear contained a terrifying true energy and actually possessed the might of a 5th-grade battle king. At this moment, Song Tao's figure was floating in the air. Faced with this thrust, he was actually unable to retaliate. Both of his hands were holding onto people and his foot was injured by Bufang's pitch-black kitchen knife. Tears streamed down Song Tao's cheeks. What kind of grudge was this? Why was it so difficult to complete a mission? The Yang family's Luo Sanyang, a 5th-grade battle king, was Yang Chen's third sister-in-law. Her true energy cultivation was extremely profound, and she was considered one of the best among the females in the imperial city. No, it should be said that the females of the Yang family were all incomparably valiant and powerful. Song Tao did not expect the Yang family to arrive so quickly. In this situation, he had to put down someone in order to safely block Luo Sanyang's spear. Therefore, he put down Ouyang Xiaoyi. Compared to Yang Chen, the importance of the Ouyang family's little princess was not that obvious. Ouyang Xiaoyi bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she fell from the sky. She was so frightened that she kept screaming. Her mind suddenly became blank, and she forgot that she was also a fourth-grade battle spirit. Bufang did not panic at all. He took a step forward and caught the dragon bone kitchen knife with one hand and Ouyang Xiaoyi with the other. Even though he was a fifth-grade battle spirit, he still had his true energy cultivation as a foundation. It was not a problem for him to catch a little lowly. Bang bang bang! The battle in the sky lasted for 3 moves. Luo Sanyang let out a muffled groan and staggered a few steps back after landing on the ground. Her chest was surging and her heroic face was filled with anger. Song Tao was a 6th-grade battle emperor after all. Luo Sanyang would not be able to win by fighting him head-on. You little rascal, who gave you the guts to hold the young duke hostage? You are courting death. Luo Sanyang shouted. She kicked the spear with her slender leg and dashed forward once again. Her spear was thrusting toward Song Tao. True energy surged out from Luo Sanyang's body as if there were raging flames. The entire spear was surging like a raging flame. This lunatic! This is the Imperial City. Song Tao's pupils constricted. He felt uneasy when he saw Luo Sanyang's move. If he were to block the attack with a single hand, the flames that splashed out would destroy the surrounding area. There were so many spectators below who did not know what was going on, and a few of them would die. That would cause a huge commotion. The members of the Yang family are all lunatics, unreasonable lunatics. Song Tao cursed inwardly. He had no choice but to abandon Yang Chen. Then, he raised both of his hands and shot out 2 balls of true energy to cover the spear that was wreathed in flames, dispersing the flames. In the distance, the city guards had also arrived. Song Tao let out a long howl in dissatisfaction, turned around and flew away while limping. He had planned for so long and was even treated as a stinky beggar. In the end, it was all for naught. Song Tao was furious. If it wasn't for Bufang's kitchen knife that injured the sole of his foot, he would have escaped long ago. Luo Sanyang looked at Song Tao's back as he limped away. She disdainfully spat out a mouthful of blood and snorted coldly. Then, she jogged toward Yang Chen, who had landed safely on the ground. Third sister-in-law. Yang Chen called out timidly when he saw his third sister-in-law running toward him. Luo Sanyang stopped in front of Yang Chen and directly twisted Yang Chen's ear. You little brat, how dare you slack off and go out to play? You must have gotten into trouble. Third sister-in-law. I won't dare to do it again. Yang Chen felt that he had lost all his face, so he hurriedly begged for mercy. Luo Sanyang exhaled angrily. She couldn't help but cough lightly as her chest rose and fell violently. Hurry up and thank Ownerbu. If it wasn't for him, the 2 of you might have been captured again today, Luo Sanyang said in a bad mood. At this moment, Bufang also walked over with Ouyang Xiaoyi, who was still in a state of shock. He glanced at Luo Sanyang and swept his gaze across her turbulent chest. Without changing his expression, he plainly said, Why did that person want to capture Xiaoyi and the little boy? Luo Sanyang, who had just recovered from the shock, narrowed her eyes. She puffed up her chest and shouted, Oh no! Master Ho and old General Ouyang have already gone to find the Crown Prince. Chapter 107. This morning, the Marquis and General Ouyang received a secret letter from the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince said that he had news of your whereabouts, so the General and the Marquis went to the Crown Prince's palace, Luo Sanyang said with an unpleasant expression. Yang Chen and Ouyang Xiaoyi only understood half of what Luo Sanyang said. Clearly, they did not understand what she meant. Bufang, on the other hand, understood the whole story. However, he did not care about it at all. To him, it did not matter who became the emperor. He only wanted to open a small restaurant in the Imperial City. As long as the emperor did not cause trouble for him, everything would be fine. All right, since that guy has been chased away by you, you can bring these two back, Bu Fang said to Luo Sanyang. Luo Sanyang was startled. Then, she looked at Bu Fang and nodded. I've long heard of Owner Bu's great name. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, I can tell that the owner of the restaurant who has caused a commotion in the imperial city is indeed not an ordinary person. The fact that Bu Fang was able to nearly cut off the soul of a 6th-grade battle emperor with a kitchen knife showed just how incredible his combat prowess was. Battle emperors were already considered top-notch experts in the entire Light Wind Empire. However, a mere 4th-grade battle spirit's kitchen knife was able to shred the protective layer of true energy into pieces. This was completely beyond Luo Sanyang's imagination. Yanyu and I are good friends, so I've heard a little about Owner Bu. I've always wanted to find an opportunity to taste the delicacies that Yanyu praised so highly at Owner Bu's restaurant. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely come again, Luo Sanyang said seriously. You're more than welcome. Bu Fang nodded. It turned out that this big-breasted girl knew Xiao Yanyu. No wonder she could greet him so naturally. Luo Sanyang held on to Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen's hands, and after bidding farewell to Bu Fang, she hurriedly left with the two little fellows. The Crown Prince had sent a secret letter to the Ouyang and Yang clans. It was obvious that he planned to use the letter to coerce the two clans into supporting him. This would be a great help to him in his bid for the throne. However, in reality, Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen were not in the hands of the Crown Prince. Or perhaps the two brats just happened to escape. If that was the case, the situation was a little ambiguous. The people from the Immortal Phoenix restaurant had already taken away the tables and ingredients used for the competition. As for Bu Fang's masterpiece, the 1,000-layer tofu flour, it was carefully taken away by Qian Bao. This work of art could be said to be a masterpiece among knife work. There were even some minor carvings mixed into it. The alleyway once again became spacious and spacious. However, news of Bu Fang's godly knife skills had completely spread. The defeat of a chef from the Immortal Phoenix restaurant at the hands of the Black-Hearted Store's owner was quite a gimmick. At the very least, there were many people who followed in Bu Fang's footsteps and wanted to continue witnessing Bu Fang's culinary skills. Bu Fang walked back into the store, but he closed the door, completely ignoring the crowd at the entrance. Owner Bu, why are you closing so early? A customer asked with some doubts. They had seen Bu Fang's knife skills and wanted to taste the delicacies in the restaurant. They didn't expect Bu Fang to close. Today's opening hours have ended. Those who want to taste the delicacies, come back early tomorrow and line up. Bu Fang expressionlessly said. He completely ignored the dissatisfied customers at the entrance. Boss, you are so unreasonable. It's not like we are not paying you to eat, why don't you open the door? Isn't the purpose of opening a store to earn money? You have money to earn, are you stupid? The dissatisfied complaints of the customers continuously resounded in the alleyway. It was obvious that Bu Fang's decision to close the store had angered them. Bu Fang leaned against the entrance and expressionlessly glanced at the crowd. He was not in a hurry to answer them. He simply looked at them indifferently and listened to their endless complaints and curses. When everyone was tired, Bu Fang stood up and lifted the last piece of the door. He said, I already said that the opening hours have ended. Those who want to eat, come back early tomorrow and line up. We do not provide service during non-opening hours. After Bu Fang finished speaking, he slammed the last door shut with a bang, causing everyone to be shut in the face. Everyone was dumbfounded. Was there really such a weird and willful boss in this world? He refused to earn money? Bah! What kind of trashy store is this? What are you trying to show off for? I don't even want to eat. A customer spat in dissatisfaction and turned around, planning to leave. However, just as he took a step forward, he felt a huge pressure on his body. His entire body was pressed onto the ground, right at the spot where he spat. He gently rubbed against the ground and wiped the floor clean. Only then did he feel the pressure disappear. That person's face was filled with terror as he awkwardly crawled out of the alleyway. Damn it! There was something wrong with this alleyway. The others did not feel the pressure. However, they were puzzled as they saw that person leave in a crazed manner. Since the store's door was not open, they did not insist and left the alleyway one after another. The entire alleyway returned to its tranquil state. Blackie, who was lying at the entrance, lazily rolled its doggy eyes. It twisted its doggy head, adjusted its posture, and went back to sleep comfortably. "How dare you spit in front of the store? How could I let you go without wiping the floor clean?" Bufang returned to the store, took off his overcoat, stretched his body, and walked toward the kitchen. The system's reward had already been given out. Bufang did not care about it. Regarding the system's somewhat vengeful mission, Bufang found it a little funny. He did not expect the system to throw a tantrum. Returning to the kitchen, a wisp of green smoke curled around Bufang's hand, and the incomparably sharp dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. The dragon bone kitchen knife, which almost sliced off the soul of a 6th-grade battle emperor, was still as unremarkable as before. It was not tainted by dust or blood. However, Bufang still habitually used the spring water prepared by the system to wash the blade. After all, as a chef, Bufang was still a little obsessed with cleanliness. After washing the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, Bufang waved his hand and the kitchen knife turned into a wisp of green smoke as it returned to the icon on Bufang's wrist. Then, he stared at the chopping board in front of him in a daze for a while. Bufang suddenly did not feel like cooking the dishes on the store's menu. Cooking every day had also caused him to become a little tired. Humans were lazy and Bufang was also a human. He wanted to return to his room to sleep, but he felt that it was a little too early for that. Therefore, Bufang was momentarily hesitant and did not know what to do. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and took out a small piece of wandering dragon cow meat from the system's storage space. This was the thigh meat of the wandering dragon cow, and it was filled with rich spirit energy. Looking at the thigh meat that was emitting rich spirit energy, Bufang rubbed his chin. He suddenly wanted to cook his own dish, instead of following the dishes on the menu. Creating and researching new dishes was something that every chef was extremely interested in, and Bufang was no exception. The wandering dragon cow was a 7th-grade spirit beast, and its meat was extremely hard. A normal kitchen knife would not be able to cut through it. Therefore, Bufang once again summoned the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, and quickly chopped the wandering dragon cow meat into minced meat. Looking at the minced meat, Bufang suddenly thought of an extremely delicious dish. However, in order to cook that dish, he still needed to prepare and process a lot of things. The steps were quite troublesome. However, when he thought of that dish, Bufang's originally tired heart suddenly became full of motivation. He took out the intestines of the wandering dragon cow from the system's storage space and placed the blood-stained intestines into the water trough to continuously wash them. He used the spirit spring water prepared by the system to wash them so that the spirit energy on the intestines would not be lost. After washing the intestines, Bufang began to carefully peel off the outer layer of the intestines. This casing was an important ingredient for the dish that Bufang was going to cook next. Chapter 108. On the long street of the Imperial City, heavy snowflakes fluttered down from the sky, covering the green bricks and stone tiles, pressing down on the roofs of the tents set up by the vendors on both sides of the street. The rustling cold breeze blew past, causing the pedestrians wrapped in layers upon layers of clothes to shiver uncontrollably. They breathed out a breath of air and continued forward. Luo Sanyang pulled Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen along as the three of them stepped on the snow, slowly walking on the long street of the Imperial City. The wind blew and the snowflakes fell, but they were all blocked by Luo Sanyang's true energy barrier. As the three of them walked, Luo Sanyang was still scolding Yang Chen. Yang Chen's little face was scrunched up, looking bitter. Beside her, Ouyang Xiaoyi giggled, laughing at Yang Chen's embarrassing appearance. All of a sudden, the wind and snow that filled the sky suddenly stopped, and the entire long street became quiet. Luo Sanyang's pupils shrank. She could not hear anything other than the sound of her own breathing in the cold winter. She turned her head with difficulty to look at Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen. The two of them kept opening and closing their mouths, as if they were saying something, but Luo Sanyang could not hear a single word. At the end of the long street, a man draped in a crane feather cloak slowly walked forward with his hands clasped behind his back. With every step he took, Luo Sanyang felt the pressure on her abruptly increase. The scenery around her became dim, and the only thing left in her eyes was the leisurely walking man. Zhao Musheng? Luo Sanyang's red lips slightly opened as she shouted the name in shock. However, she found that she could not make a single sound. Her delicate body was slightly trembling, suppressed by the pressure to the point that she could not even move. With his hands clasped behind his back, Zhao Musheng slowly and leisurely walked in front of Luo Sanyang. His eyes were as vast as the sea, as if there was a Buddha's light circulating within them. Luo Sanyang blankly stared at Zhao Musheng. The latter's lips slightly curled up, and he stepped past her. Holding Yang Chen and Ouyang Xiaoyi's hands, one step at a time, they disappeared from the long street of the imperial city. Bang! Luo Sanyang's eyes widened as she knelt on the ground powerlessly. Her towering chest constantly heaved up and down in an extremely exaggerated manner. The clamor in her ears returned, and the cold wind was still howling. Snowflakes fell quietly and landed on Luo Sanyang's loose black hair. She didn't know when her genuine qi barrier had collapsed. The imperial capital was shaken. The Ouyang and Yang families, the two giants, had announced their support for the crown prince's ascension to the throne. For the imperial capital, which was already surging with undercurrents, this was equivalent to a great earthquake. The nobles, who were still wavering, began to take sides one after another. Most of them chose to support the crown prince, Ji Chengan. The number of influential officials supporting King Yu had greatly decreased. With the support of the two giants, the Ouyang family and the Yang family, the crown prince's ascension to the throne had become even more assured. Once the crown prince ascended to the throne, King Yu would basically have no chance of turning the tables. That was because there was still another influential family in the imperial city, the Shao family. General Xiao Meng had long announced that he would only support the emperor. This meant that unless they used some special methods, the Shao family would not support either the crown prince or King Yu. King Yu's manner. King Yu, Ji Qingyu's expression darkened. He slammed his palm down and shattered the entire table into pieces. The aura around his body became extremely gloomy. That damned Zhao Musheng! That wretched old fox didn't make any moves earlier on. I thought he was going to be a bystander as well. I didn't expect him to pull such a stunt. Damn it! Damn it! In the room, Han Qianyun, who was wrapped in a black robe, looked at the furious King Yu and faintly smiled. King Yu, there's no need to get angry. Humans will always make mistakes. The fact that Zhao Musheng was able to become the minister of the left shows how cunning he is. However, even if the crown prince has the support of the Ouyang and Yang families, we might still be able to put up a fight. King Yu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the anger within him. He looked at Han Qianyun and signaled him to continue speaking. We have already roped in quite a number of ministers from the imperial court, including the Minister of Finance. With the Minister of Finance, we will be able to control the economy of the imperial city. Furthermore, the White Bone Palace and the Joyous Union sect of the four major devil sects have also sent experts to support King Yu. In terms of high-end combat power, as long as Xiao Meng doesn't make a move, we will be able to suppress the crown prince, Han Qianyun said. The White Bone Palace and the Joyous Union sect? King Yu's eyes instantly narrowed. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's and as sharp as a knife as he stared at Hun Qianyun. However, Hun Qianyun remained calm and collected as he calmly looked at King Yu. When did I say I needed the support of the White Bone Palace and the Joyous Union sect? You four sects of the devil sects are really on the same side, King Yu said with a sneer. Hun Qianyun lightly smiled as he shook his head. It's no longer the four sects of the devil sections. The Death Soul Palace was wiped out by Emperor Changfeng and suffered a great loss. They can no longer be considered as one of the four major devil sections. However, King Yu has the support of the three major devil sections. Don't tell me you don't have the confidence to sit on the throne? You sure are confident, King Yu said as he narrowed his eyes. Likewise, the will-o'-the-wisp in Hun Qianyun's sunken eye sockets pulsated. Bufang carefully peeled off the wandering dragon cow's small intestine. The transparent and elastic small intestine skin was extremely suitable for making sausage casings. That was right, Bufang was planning to make sausages. This was a delicacy that Bufang was extremely fond of back on Earth. When a truly well-made sausage was cooked, its aroma would definitely be so rich that it would make one swallow their tongue. However, the sausage that Bufang was making this time was not an ordinary sausage. Just the ingredients alone were several hundred times better than an ordinary sausage. Only Bufang would be extravagant enough to use the 7th-grade wandering dragon cow's meat to make sausages. After making the sausage casings, Bufang first placed the sausage casings to the side. Then, he took out some of the spirit herbs that he picked in the Valley of the Fallen Phoenix from the system's storage space. The grade of these spirit herbs was not as high as the Phoenix blood herb, but they were still overflowing with spirit energy and were rather precious. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun like a falling meteor as it chopped up these spirit herbs. Due to the unique characteristics of the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, the medicinal properties of these spirit herbs were perfectly preserved. After mixing the spirit herbs and the diced meat together for a while, Bufang added some seasonings and took out the sausage casings. He took out some rock candy. This was a special rock candy provided by the system. Every piece was as beautiful as a gem. However, this beauty was quickly crushed by Bufang's kitchen knife. After mixing the rock candy into the minced meat, Bufang started stuffing the minced meat into the sausage casings. With the help of true energy, stuffing the minced meat was rather easy. As long as Bufang channeled his true energy, the sausage casings would swell up and he could easily stuff the minced meat inside. When the entire sausage casings were filled, Bufang used the intestines to cut them into individual sausages. Looking at the swollen sausages, rich spirit energy was even seeping out from the sausage casings. Even before they were cooked, a fragrance was already wafting in the air. This fragrance was not the fragrance of the meat, but the fragrance of the spirit herbs mixed within. Bufang was quite satisfied. There were about 20 or so sausages in each piece. There was only so much of these sausages. Once they were all sold out, there would be no more. After all, there was only one 7th-grade wandering dragon cow, and it only had one small intestine. As Bufang imagined the fragrance that would be emitted after he deep-fried the sausages, he could not help but salivate. He could not wait to give it a try. However, there was no point in being impatient. The sausages that had just been processed still needed to be air-dried for a few days. Therefore, Bufang hung the sausages in the cabinet provided by the system. This cabinet had the effect of speeding up the air-drying process. It was the same principle that sped up the fermentation time of the 9-brewing wine method. After closing the cabinet, Bufang let out a long sigh. There was some anticipation in his heart. After all, this was the first time he cooked a dish that was not provided by the system. System, how much would my sausages cost after they are cooked? Bufang curiously asked the system. Chapter 109. The host's homemade dish has been detected. Price evaluation will now begin. The system's serious voice resounded in Bufang's mind, then it went silent. Bufang waited for a few seconds but did not hear the system's voice again. He suddenly felt a little puzzled. However, the system's serious voice soon rang out again. Wandering Dragon Cow Meat Sausage. The meat used is the Wandering Dragon Cow's thigh, which is rich in spirit energy. Various natural spirit herbs are added to enhance the sausage's medicinal value. The sausage casing is the casing of the Wandering Dragon Cow, which wraps around the spirit energy and prevents it from dissipating. The system's evaluation of this dish is 250 crystals per sausage. Cultivations below 5th grade Battle King cannot eat it. 250 crystals per sausage. When Bufang heard the price, he was stunned and could not help but become speechless. One sausage was actually sold for 250 crystals. This was the most expensive dish in the store to date. Furthermore, it was his homemade dish. For some reason, Bufang suddenly felt a little excited. However, after thinking about it, Bufang felt that it was reasonable. This sausage was different from the improved rice noodle roll. The rice noodle roll that Bufang added was only a few pieces of the Wandering Dragon Cow meat. This time, the entire sausage was stuffed with the Wandering Dragon Cow's thigh meat. The quantity of the two was incomparable. Furthermore, not only the Wandering Dragon Cow meat, the spirit herbs added were also expensive. Therefore, the price of 250 crystals was not considered expensive and could even be considered affordable. After all, it was basically impossible for an average person to eat the meat of a 7th grade spirit beast. There were a total of 21 sausages. If he sold all of them, he would be able to earn about 5,000 crystals. If he wanted to advance to 5th grade Battle King, he would need 10,000 crystals to convert true energy. Based on the 50% true energy conversion rate, he would have to make a profit of 20,000 crystals. After selling all of these sausages, he would be able to save a quarter of the time needed to advance. This was a pleasant surprise for Bufang. Most importantly, these 21 sausages did not even consume the meat of a thigh. If the meat of the entire Wandering Dragon Cow was all cooked and sold, Bufang would probably have enough sales to break through to the 6th grade Battle Emperor level. For such an expensive sausage, Bufang actually wanted to immediately cook one and taste it. Unfortunately, the sausage needed time to dry. Therefore, Bufang stretched his back and walked toward his room. After washing up, he went to bed. As a god of cooking who wanted to stand at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world, sleep was the most important thing. Yang Manor. Luo Sanyang's legs were trembling as she returned to the mansion. As soon as she stepped into the mansion, a graceful figure trotted over from afar and supported her. "Sister Luo, what's wrong?" A soft and sweet female voice that was as gentle as water came from the mouth of this graceful figure. "Wan quickly take me to see the Marquis," Luo Sanyang hurriedly said as she pulled the beautiful woman in a dark green dress. Luo Sanyang's reaction clearly startled the girl called Wan. She asked timidly, "Sister, have you found little Chen?" "I met him and saved him. I was about to bring him back, but he was kidnapped in the end." Luo Sanyang's eyes suddenly dimmed. Wan opened her mouth slightly and exclaimed in disbelief, "Who dared to kidnap someone from my hands in the Imperial City?" Luo Sanyang had a bitter smile on her face. She was at a loss for words. Even now, she still could not believe that the man shrouded in Buddhist light was actually Zhao Mushing, the minister of the left who had always been known for his elegance and was known as the frail scholar. It turned out that everyone had been deceived by Zhao Mushing. Not only was this sly old fox not a weak scholar, he was also a terrifying expert whose cultivation level was so high that Luo Sanyang could not even resist. That kind of frightening aura, as if his entire being could stir up the pressure of heaven and earth, was something that Luo Sanyang had only felt from one person so far. That person was the #1 expert of the Light Wind Empire, 7th grade battle saint Xiao Meng. Zhao Mushing was a 7th grade battle saint? Even Luo Sanyang herself was a little confused. Even she found it hard to believe such a far-fetched story. When Emperor Chongfeng was still alive, Zhao Mushing, the minister of the left, passed the imperial examinations. Step by step, he became the Zhuangyuan of the imperial examinations from a young scholar. Along the way, he rose rapidly, spending several decades to reach the position of minister of the left. Everyone thought that Zhao Mushing was just a scholar, a simple and ordinary scholar. Therefore, many people did not care about him. Even if he was unparalleled in strategy, the empire still valued martial arts. Everyone thought that a scholar could not do anything. As the night fell, the imperial city was still shaking. The entire imperial city was filled with turbulent undercurrents and danger lurked everywhere. In the Yang manor, the Marquis of Western Pacification, Yang Mo, returned with a gloomy expression. Luo Sanyang told the Marquis of Western Pacification, the dignified old man with a head full of white hair, everything she had seen and heard. "I understand," Yang Mo indifferently said as he signaled for Luo Sanyang and Wan Er to leave. He sat on the throne in silence. Zhao Mushing supported the crown prince's ascension and kidnapped Ouyang Xiaoyi and Yang Chen to force the two families to support the crown prince. He was completely planning to go against King Yu. If Zhao Mushing is really a 7th grade battle saint, why did he hide his cultivation level for so many years in the imperial city? Zhao Mushing, oh Zhao Mushing, who exactly are you? And what is your motive? Yang Mo softly muttered. He was not worried about Yang Chen's safety. Moreover, in a few days, Zhao Mushing would send someone to bring Yang Chen back. However, this would not change anything, because the Yang and Ouyang families had already chosen a side. With so many courtiers following behind them, they could not go back on their word. In other words, they could only continue to support the crown prince. But is the crown prince really suitable to be the emperor? Yang Mo let out a long sigh. Even though the crown prince was not muddle-headed and tyrannical, he was too mediocre and there was still a gap between him and King Yu. Yang Mo could not see through Zhao Mushing's thoughts on supporting the crown prince. At this moment, the Ouyang family was also sighing one after another. In this chaotic imperial city, no one had a good night's sleep. However, Bufang had a very good night's sleep. The so-called important matters of the imperial family had nothing to do with him. His only goal was to run his store well. When the night quietly passed and the morning star appeared, Bufang got up on time. Wearing a woolen coat, Bufang walked out of his room and went to the kitchen. Every day at this time was the time to practice his cutting technique. Even though he had the system, Bufang still had to practice diligently. There were no shortcuts on the road to success. However, Bufang did not plan to practice his cutting techniques today. His meteor cutting technique had already reached the first stage. Even though he had already started practicing the second stage, Bufang was not in a hurry. He wanted to first practice the Big Dipper carving technique that he had already started. When it came to carving techniques, Bufang actually had some experience. The 1,000-layer tofu flour he made yesterday was mixed with some carving techniques while he was using his cutting technique. Even though it was not much, it still caused the 1,000-layer tofu flour to amaze everyone present. Now that he was going to start practicing his carving techniques, it might not be as difficult as the 1,000-layer tofu flour, but he did not need to mix in so many complicated cutting technique. Big Dipper carving technique. A special carving technique that requires the use of true energy. When the host is carving, the host must constantly condense true energy and carve the dish meticulously so that the true energy on the kitchen knife adheres to the surface of the dish, creating a lifelike and dreamlike effect. The Big Dipper carving technique also provides an exclusive magic array. After the carving is completed, The dish can be displayed on a plate to enhance the aesthetic effect of the dish. Bu Fong looked up the system's introduction of the Big Dipper carving technique. After reading it, it was obvious that this carving technique was not an ordinary one. It even required the use of true energy. The level of this technique was immediately elevated. Chapter 110. Practicing the Big Dipper carving technique required the use of true energy. This was even more difficult for the trainer because true energy was very unstable. Once it adhered to the ingredients would be destroyed if there was even the slightest bit of carelessness. Therefore, the chef's ability to control true energy was extremely strict. Just like the knife training, the system prepared a special kitchen knife for Bu Fong. However, the kitchen knife used for knife training was extremely heavy. It was made from a special metal and was extremely strenuous just to pick it up. This time, the kitchen knife used for carving was also specially made. Bu Fong looked at the thick kitchen knife and felt a little uncomfortable. Shouldn't the carving training be done with a very small and exquisite knife? Why did you give me a kitchen knife used to chop a pig's leg? The kitchen knife was not very heavy, but the visual shock it gave people made Bu Fong want to die. Pulling the corners of his mouth, Bu Fong walked to the cupboard and took out a piece of tofu prepared by the system. This was the ingredient for knife training. Of course, the tofu this time was not for Bu Fong to test his knife skills, but for carving. The tofu was incomparably white and was still emitting steam. A faint fragrance wafted out from the tofu. Without a doubt, the quality of this tofu was definitely very high. At the very least, it was much better than the tofu prepared by the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Picking up the thick kitchen knife, Bu Fong faced the palm-sized piece of tender tofu. For a moment, he was in a dilemma and did not know how to start. With the first cut, true energy surged and directly shattered the tender tofu, causing the tofu to scatter in all directions. It was obvious that his first attempt had failed. However, Bu Fong was not discouraged. Holding onto the kitchen knife that was like a pig's cleaver, Bu Fong did not expect to succeed on his first try. Therefore, his expression did not change as he continued to take out a piece of tofu from the cupboard and continued his carving training. When it was time to open for business, the table was already piled with a thick layer of tofu fragments. Bu Fong did not know how many times he had failed. However, the most important thing was to grow through failure, reflect on failure, and find the knack for it. True energy flowed into the specially made kitchen knife like a clear stream. Bu Fong wielded the kitchen knife as if it was nothing, delicately cutting and drawing something on the soft tofu. His movements weren't very smooth, but at least it was a lot better than before when he was like tofu that would shatter with a single tut. Gently pulling the kitchen knife, Bu Fong exhaled a long breath. He spun the kitchen knife in his hand and put it down after twirling it. He had finally completed his first work. In front of Bu Fong's eyes, some parts of the palm-sized tofu began to fall off, like clothes being taken off, revealing the world inside. It was a lotus carved from tofu. The white and delicate petals were as thin as paper and almost transparent. It seemed as if they would shatter with a gust of wind. These petals were stacked on top of each other and were extremely beautiful. Moreover, it seemed like there was a stream of light flickering on the surface of the lotus flower made of tofu due to the influx of true energy. It was exceptionally eye-catching. I still need to practice hard. However, after a morning of training, I can finally carve out my first work. Bu Fong muttered to himself. Then, he cleaned up the kitchen and started cooking sweet and sour ribs as black as breakfast. A busy day once again began. For 3 consecutive days, the imperial city was in a turbulent state and the situation in the imperial court was constantly changing. The news of Emperor Chongfeng's death had already spread and the time of the funeral had already been confirmed. It was set to be 3 days before the spring festival. The funeral of an emperor would definitely be a grand and sensational event. Even though the crown prince and King Yu were still fighting for the throne, they did not dare to neglect Emperor Chongfeng's funeral. In an empire, when it came to etiquette, they had to treat it seriously. This was not only a sign of respect for Emperor Chongfeng, but also a test of filial piety as a son. Ji Qingxue, who had gone on a campaign against the sects outside the city, had already started to return to the imperial city. The news of the emperor's death had finally reached his ears. Therefore, Ji Qingxue chose to return to the imperial city. Even though he knew that the imperial city was already in a mess, he still wanted to return. It was not only because of the funeral. On the rugged mountain road, a crowd of soldiers was slowly advancing. Ji Qingxue was dressed in military attire and exuded a heroic spirit as he slowly walked in the middle of the procession. His handsome face had an extremely solemn expression. Beside Ji Qingxue, a figure wearing a conical bamboo hat was riding on a horse and was also slowly advancing. Both of them were silent and the atmosphere was extremely awkward and stiff. When the majestic silhouette of the imperial city came into view, Ji Qingxue took a deep breath and his eyes flickered with a profound light. "Are you really planning to return to the imperial city?" A hoarse voice came from the mouth of the man wearing the conical bamboo hat and traveled into Ji Qingxue's ears. "There are only 10 days left until the spring festival. Father's funeral is 3 days before the spring festival. If I don't return now, I won't even be able to make it in time for father's funeral," Ji Qingxue gently said. "However, you have to think this through. Once you step into the imperial city, the crown prince and King Yu might target you. At that time, you will be in danger. I've never been safe. Even though they don't seem to care about me on the surface, I'm still a prince after all." Ji Qingxue chuckled. He turned his head to look at the man hidden under the conical bamboo hat and said, "It's not safe for me to enter the imperial city. You won't be any better off if you enter the imperial city, right? Shall you?" The figure under the conical bamboo hat chuckled. His voice was hoarse and helpless. However, after a long while, the two of them started laughing at each other. "Speaking of which, I really miss Owner Boo's Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. I haven't smelled that wine in a long time and I'm really craving it. I really want to drink a dozen jars to my heart's content," Xiao Yu said in a hoarse voice. The corners of Ji Qingxue's mouth curled up as well. He glanced at Xiao Yu and said, "A dozen jars? In your dreams. Owner Boo only sells 3 jars a day. It's already good enough for you to drink 1 jar." Xiao Yu was startled for a moment and then let out a sigh of relief. Before Ji Qingxue's army entered the imperial city, 3 figures were standing at the majestic and tall city gate. The one in the lead was a woman wearing a veil. This woman was dressed very casually. Her long black hair was tied up with a thin string, and she did not have many accessories. She was also wearing a loose robe that completely concealed her figure. Behind the woman stood 2 figures respectfully. If Bu Fong was here, he would definitely recognize these 2 people. This was because they were Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao, whom Bu Fong encountered in the wildlands. At this moment, Tang Yin, who was wearing a green robe, was looking at the long-robed woman with respect and fear. There was a conflicted expression on his face. "Master, are we really going to look for Senior? Senior is really scary and unfathomable," Tang Yin helplessly said. The eyes of the veiled woman turned and landed on Tang Yin. Suddenly, a huge pressure caused Tang Yin to break out in a cold sweat. This woman's eyes were extremely beautiful. Her eyelashes were long and curved, the corners of her eyes were slightly curled up, and her skin was fair and tender. Just by looking at her eyes, it was as if she could cause the downfall of a country. "Little Enin, I don't know how powerful the Senior you're talking about is, but if you continue to nag in front of me, I'll make you drink an entire jar of my specially made spicy sauce," the woman said. Her voice was rather moving, but the words she said made Tang Yin want to cry. This woman was Tang Yin's master, the 3rd elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect, Ni Yen, a temperamental woman. After glaring at Tang Yin, Ai Yen turned her gaze toward Lu Xiaoxiao and said, "Girl, the phoenix blood herb was taken by that guy, right? You're not lying to me, right?" Lu Xiaoxiao hurriedly nodded. Ai Yan's beautiful eyes narrowed. With a snort, she walked toward the imperial city. "You dared to snatch my phoenix blood herb, and I heard that you're also a chef. I love to use my cooking skills to talk. Aha!" Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao looked at each other in dismay, then hurriedly followed after him. Chapter 111. As expected of the imperial city of the Light Wind Empire, it's so lively. It's much more lively than that shabby corner of the sect. Ai Yan's delicate body was covered by a loose robe. She muttered as she curiously observed her surroundings as she slowly walked along the streets of the imperial city. On a winter morning, both sides of the street were filled with hawkers and merchants selling all kinds of items. It was quite lively, and even the fluttering snow seemed to be unable to dampen the enthusiasm of the hawkers. Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao carefully followed behind Ai Yen, afraid that they would lose track of her. Their cheap master was good in every aspect. Her cultivation level was peerless, and she was a 7th-grade battle saint. Her culinary skills were also superb. The dishes she cooked were fragrant, and her looks were incomparable. However, she had a weakness that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. That was, she had no sense of direction. "Xiao Yining, you should open a store in the Sex Plaza in the future. Who knows, you might be able to earn more. You can also bring some liveliness to the sect that's always so neurotic. Normally, when you go out, you don't even see a shadow. It's so unsightly," Ai Yen said to Tang Yin, who was following behind her. Tang Yin immediately let out a hollow laugh. He was a 6th-grade battle emperor, yet he ran to the Sex Plaza to be a hawker. He was not a fool. "Oh right, what's the name of the seniors' restaurant that you guys mentioned?" Ai Yen tilted her head and a perfect arc immediately appeared on her veiled face. Tang Yin was about to answer, but before he could say anything, Ai Yen interrupted him. "Well, since that guy is so arrogant and has a high cultivation level, then his restaurant should be the most famous restaurant in the imperial city." Under Tang Yin's speechless gaze, Ai Yen found an auntie who was selling vegetables and directly asked her a question. She was looking for the most famous restaurant in the imperial city. "The most famous restaurant in the imperial city? Of course it's the Immortal Phoenix restaurant," the auntie replied with a thick local accent. "Immortal Phoenix restaurant?" Ai Yen nodded. After thanking the auntie, she continued walking forward. Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao looked at each other helplessly. In the end, Tang Yin opened his mouth and said, "Master, the restaurant that the senior mentioned seems to be called Fong Fong's Little Store." "What Fong Fong's Little Store? Yuan's Little Store? What a terrible name. Forget it, we'll go to Fong Fong's Little Store later. Let's go to the most famous restaurant in the imperial city first. I want to taste the dishes from the most famous restaurant in the imperial city," Ai Yen said seriously. Even though Ai Yen was the 3rd elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect, she was different from the other elders who specialized in astrology and divination. She put all her heart and soul into her culinary skills. She loved to cook with the meat of spirit beasts, and she loved to research new dishes. But most importantly, she was a foodie. When it came to delicacies, he was obsessed with them. Tang Yin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at his master, who was swaggering in front of him. His master seemed to be unable to control himself when it came to delicacies. It seemed like the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was going to suffer. Although her master loved delicious food, it was precisely because of this that she was so picky. The 3 of them quickly arrived at the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The magnificently decorated Immortal Phoenix restaurant was still bustling with people as customers came and went. Business was booming as usual. Even though the chef of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant lost to the Black-Hearted store's owner in a competition of cutting techniques, it did not stop the customers from coming to eat. "Oh my, is this your first time visiting my Immortal Phoenix restaurant? Quick, please come in." Just as the three of them stepped into the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, the middle-aged elder sister Chun, who still retained her charm, swayed her body as she walked over with a smile. And Yen glanced at elder sister Chun, then her enchanting eyes turned and looked in another direction, causing elder sister Chun to feel rather awkward. Tang Yin stepped forward and exchanged a few pleasantries with elder sister Chun. Elder sister Chun giggled as she brought the three of them to a table on the first floor. And Yen lifted her robe and her slender and fair legs were faintly discernible. Then, she sat down on a stool with a frown on her face. She swiped her finger on the dining table and discontentedly commented, "Poor hygiene, affects appetite, poor rating." Elder sister Chun's eyebrows twitched and her chest uncontrollably trembled. Why did those words sound so familiar? "Give me a portion of all the dishes on the first floor that you think are top-notch," and Yen said to elder sister Chun after she finished commenting on the hygiene. The feeling in elder sister Chun's heart became more and more obvious. She could not help but recall the young man who said those words last time. That delicate and handsome young man who always had an expressionless face. Oh my God, this woman is not here to cause trouble as well, is she? Elder sister Chun was truly frightened by what happened to Bu Fong last time. However, since it was a customer's request, she had no choice but to comply. Therefore, she arranged for someone to prepare the dishes. While she was arranging for someone to prepare the dishes, elder sister Chun also introduced the rules and layout of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant to an Yen. "You mean that the Immortal Phoenix restaurant is divided into 3 floors and the first floor is the worst?" an Yen asked. Seeing elder sister Chun nod, an Yen softly replied with an "oh," and did not say anything else. After waiting for a while, the first dish was served. A waiter with a white towel draped over his shoulder carried the dish, and placed the red braised lion head in front of an Yen. An Yen took off her veil and her face, which was so exquisite that it almost made one forget to breathe, was immediately exposed in front of elder sister Chun and the waiter. The waiter was stunned and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She was simply too beautiful. She was not the slightest bit inferior to the imperial city's #1 beauty, Xiao Yanyu. However, an Yen, who had just lightly opened her red lips and scooped up a mouthful of the red braised lion head, frowned. She immediately rattled off a long list of shortcomings of the red braised lion head. The waiter and elder sister Chun immediately recovered from their daze and were somewhat speechless. And Yen's actions reminded them of the young man who took turns in the entire Immortal Phoenix restaurant last time. The red braised lion head had already been slightly modified according to Bu Fong's evaluation. However, since it was a dish from the first floor, the Immortal Phoenix restaurant did not spend too much effort to modify it. Therefore, it was criticized by an Yen. The other dishes were the same. An Yen was extremely beautiful, but when it came to evaluating dishes, her mouth was extremely vicious. She was much more vicious than Bu Fong. Elder sister Chun was already extremely dissatisfied after listening to her. Meanwhile, an Yen, who had finished eating the dishes from the first floor, was planning to head to the second floor. Tang Yin was rich, so elder sister Chun was unable to stop him. She could only quickly contact Xian Bao because she felt that this beauty was more capable of stirring up trouble than Bu Fong. When Xian Bao arrived at the second floor, an Yen was already halfway through her meal. This flower crab is not bad. Even though the quality of the crab meat is too poor, the control of the oil temperature is still acceptable. The crab paste is also just right. It's still alright compared to the other dishes, an Yen commented after taking a bite of the pan-fried flower crab. Qian Bao, who was standing at the side, had tears streaming down his cheeks. This woman was really amazing. The points she mentioned were exactly the same as Ownerbu's evaluation. Even the points she praised were improved based on Ownerbu's evaluation. Overall, the dishes on the second floor are much better than those on the first floor. However, there are still some flaws. Let's go to the third floor now, Yen said as she stood up. When Qian Bao heard this, his face immediately revealed an awkward expression. His third floor only allowed the emperor and other respected people to go up. The identity of this woman in front of him was not clear at all, so it was impossible for him to let her step onto the third floor. I'm sorry, but the third floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant is temporarily not open to ordinary customers, Qian Bao said. Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao were both startled. Yen was also startled. She turned her head and stared at Qian Bao with her devastatingly beautiful eyes. Qian Bao was a little scared from being stared at. He braced himself and said again. Yen was unhappy. She coldly said to Qian Bao, emphasizing each word, "Let me go up, or else I'll tear down your Immortal Phoenix restaurant." Qian Bao's expression immediately turned cold. Was this woman planning to cause trouble in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant? He clapped his hand. Immediately, 3 Battle King experts appeared. "Customer, if you want to cause trouble in my Immortal Phoenix restaurant, you should consider your own weight and strength, or else." Bang! Yen raised one of her hands and slightly pressed down. Before Qian Bao could finish his sentence, the 3 Battle Kings were pressed onto the ground. The words that Qian Bao wanted to say were also stuck in his throat. "Or else what?" Yen gave Qian Bao a glance and sweetly asked with a smile. Chapter 112. Qian Bao immediately broke out in a cold sweat. She was able to defeat 3 5th-grade Battle Kings with a single slap. Just how powerful was this beautiful woman before him? The Battle Kings were the strongest guards in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Even the power behind him had only assigned 3 Battle Kings to him so that he could deal with some unexpected situations. In the past, these 3 Battle Kings had always been successful in every endeavor, but today they had encountered a tough obstacle. Tang Yin, who was standing behind Yen, looked at the 3 Battle Kings lying on the ground with a sympathetic gaze. In front of a 7th-grade Battle Saint, mere Battle Kings were nothing. Yen withdrew her palm. Her beautiful face immediately relaxed as she said with a smile, "Boss Qian, can you let us go to the 3rd floor now?" Qian Bao actually wanted to say no. However, the strength of this woman before him was simply too terrifying. He felt that if he refused, this woman might really tear down the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Just what kind of bad luck did he have recently? The rules of the 3rd floor were actually broken twice in a row. This was simply a slap in the face of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. "Sure," Qian Bao bitterly replied as he led the 3 toward the 3rd floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Yen immediately chuckled. She raised her pretty eyebrows and followed behind Qian Bao. As they stepped onto the antique 3rd floor, a pleasant sandalwood fragrance pervaded the air and calmed their minds. There were many beautiful decorations on the 3rd floor and the scenery was quite beautiful. "The decorations are pretty good." Yen nodded as she observed. Suddenly, her eyes slightly focused as she stared at the table in the distance. There was a white tofu flower in a crystal bowl with fluffy petals in full bloom. This is the work of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant chef? Yen walked closer and carefully admired the tofu flower. The more she observed it, the more astonished Yen became. That was because the tofu flower she saw was not as simple as 2 or 3 layers. Instead, it was a 1,000-layer tofu flower formed by layers upon layers. Of course, the so-called 1,000-layer tofu was naturally not as terrifying as a 1,000-layer tofu flower. However, the densely packed tofu flowers still caused Yen to suck in a breath of cold air. This cutting technique had definitely reached the level of uncanny craftsmanship. At the very least, Anai Yen admitted that her own cutting technique was definitely not capable of such a feat. No, this is Owner Bu's work. Qian Bao sighed as he looked at the 1,000-layer tofu flour. He had brought it back after the competition with Bu Fang. He had preserved the tofu flour perfectly and sealed it in a crystal bowl, making it look like an exquisite work of art. This was also a method that Qian Bao had suddenly thought of. Owner Bu. Anai Yen looked at Qian Bao in confusion. Qian Bao raised his eyebrows. The woman in front of him was so crazy about food, yet, she didn't know Owner Bu? Did they come from outside the imperial capital? Owner Bu is the owner of Fang Fang's little store, Qian Bao explained seriously. Of course, Tang Yi knew who Bu Fang was. He immediately became excited. Sure enough, Senior was not an unknown person in the imperial city. Fang Fang's little store. Anai Yen narrowed her eyes. From the exquisite cutting technique, she could tell that the chef of Fang Fang's little store was definitely not an ordinary person. Uncontrollably, Anai Yen became even more interested in Fang Fang's little store. Even Bu Fang would find it difficult to find many flaws in the 3 dishes on the 3rd floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. After improving the dishes according to Bu Fang's evaluation, they were even closer to perfection. Therefore, Anai Yen only quietly finished eating the 3 delicacies that made her feel somewhat happy. It's delicious. As expected of the 3rd floor, the chef is indeed skilled. Anai Yen once again put on her veil and covered her peerless appearance. She casually waved her hand and took out a gold coin and handed it to Qian Bao. Qian Bao was a little surprised that he could still receive money. Based on that woman's ability, even if she wanted to dine and dash, Qian Bao would not be able to resist. Send someone to bring us to Fang Fang's little store. I'm very curious what kind of delicacies a chef who can display such cutting technique can make, Anai Yen said. Owner Bu's dishes are definitely delicious, it's just that they're a little expensive. Money? Money isn't a problem, just bring us there. Lu Xiaoxiao, who had been silent all this while, finally opened her mouth. They did not lack money at all. Since the other party expressed that they did not care, Qian Bao personally brought them to the small restaurant located in the alleyway. Snow fluttered in the sky and scattered all over the ground. It seemed as if the entire imperial city was covered in a layer of silver frost. As Bu Fang opened the door, a chill mixed with a few snowflakes instantly gushed into the store, causing Bu Fang to slightly shiver. After cooking the sweet and sour ribs for Blackie, Bu Fang once again returned to the kitchen. There was an especially important matter that he needed to take care of that morning. Bu Fang was very serious and dignified. He walked in front of the cupboard where the air-drying wandering dragon cow sausages were hung and carefully opened the cupboard. A rich aroma of meat, along with the fragrance of spirit herbs, gushed out. Bu Fang reached out his hand and pinched a sausage. It was slightly elastic, which meant that the sausage had finally been air-dried to the degree he expected. The casing was slightly hard, yet it was still elastic when pinched. This meant that the sausage had already been air-dried. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Bu Fang took out 21 sausages and cut off one of them. He stored the remaining 20 sausages in the freezer. As for this long-awaited sausage, Bu Fang was itching to cook it. However, before that, he needed to make some preparations. He first poured some oil into the wok. When the heat emitted from the surface of the oil was slightly scalding, Bu Fang placed the sausage into the wok. Once the sausage was placed into the wok, it immediately emitted a sizzling sound. The white waves of oil wrapped around the sausage as it continuously rolled about, resembling a somewhat turbid snowflake. The fragrance of oil and the meat of the sausage instantly spread out from the wok and filled the entire kitchen. The fragrance of the spirit herbs also mixed with these scents, forming an aroma that made one unable to stop smelling it. This aroma was truly too fragrant. Bu Fang's mouth involuntarily started to salivate. Bufang actually did not have too many steps in cooking the sausage because it did not require too many steps. He had already handled everything that needed to be handled. All that was left was to wait for the dish to come out of the wok, and it would be perfect. Because the casing of this sausage was the casing of the small intestine of the 7th grade spirit beast, the wandering dragon cow, it was impossible to fry it with ordinary oil. Therefore, during the frying process, Bufang carefully controlled his true energy to flow into the wok of oil and permeate into the sausage. When the meaty aroma in the air reached a certain level, Bufang quickly used his chopsticks to pick up the sausage from the wok of oil. After draining all the oil on the sausage, a rosy and glossy sausage was presented in front of Bufang. Waves of meaty aroma along with the medicinal aroma wafted out from the sausage and continuously flowed into Bufang's nostrils. Before he even started tasting it, Bufang already felt as if his entire taste buds had been conquered by this aroma. With a flash of green smoke, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bufang's hand. He carefully cut the sausage into 3 pieces and cut open the casing of the sausage. The aroma of the beef wrapped within the casing surged out like a bomb. This aroma was even more intense than before, and it almost spread throughout the entire store. At the entrance, Blackie, who was wagging its tail and gobbling down the porcelain bowl of sweet and sour ribs, suddenly stopped its movements. Then, it raised its head and blinked its doggy eyes as its nose continuously twitched. What was this aroma? It smelled so good. Qian Bao had just arrived at the store with Yen and the other 2. Before they even stepped into the store, the surging meaty aroma that was like a bomb completely enveloped their taste buds, causing them to be completely intoxicated by the aroma. Regardless of whether it was Qian Bao, who had a low cultivation level, or Yen, who had reached 7th grade battle saint, they were all intoxicated by the meaty aroma of the sausage. Just like cutting open a large sausage, the fragrance of the sausage filled the air for 10 miles. Chapter 113. This meat smells so good. Why is it so fragrant? Yan's devastatingly beautiful eyes slightly widened and were filled with disbelief. The rich meaty aroma drifted toward her and gushed into her nose, immediately causing all the pores on her body to explode. As a chef and a foodie, Yan's favorite thing to do was to taste and study all kinds of delicacies. She had once used a grade 6 spirit beast to cook a dish, but unfortunately she failed. The meat of a grade 6 spirit beast contained a rich amount of spirit energy. However, once a spirit beast died, the spirit energy within its body would be sealed. Once a piece of meat was cut off, the spirit energy within the meat would rapidly dissipate. Based on Yan's experience, she was able to instantly analyze the components of the meat she smelled today. Not only was there an aroma, there was also a medicinal fragrance and rich spirit energy. The richness of the spirit energy made her feel extremely incredulous. Qian Bao continuously swallowed his saliva. This aroma. Even the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's most delicious roasted flower duck could not compare to it. Owner Bu's culinary skills were indeed extraordinary. He definitely had to give it a try today. Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao, who were following behind Yen, also had an intoxicated expression on their faces. This was not the first time they had smelled such a rich meaty aroma. Back in the wildlands, their senior had also cooked roasted meat with a rich aroma. Even now, the aroma of the roasted meat was still unforgettable to them. Bufang was carrying a porcelain plate with 3 slices of ruddy sausages on it. Steam was rising from the surface of the sausages, and there was also a nearly tangible aroma that resonated with the spirit energy. Why are you here so early today? Bufang had just walked out of the kitchen and was impatient to taste the fragrant fried sausages when he saw the 4 people standing at the entrance with intoxicated expressions on their faces. He could not help but reveal a trace of doubt on his face as he asked, Usually, there would not be any customers this early in the morning. Even Fatty Jean, who was usually punctual, would only arrive after a while. "Senior, it's us." When Tang Yin saw Bufang, that familiar appearance and that familiar smell, his eyes immediately lit up and he excitedly waved at Bufang. Bufang glanced at Tang Yin and pondered for a moment. He finally remembered who the man who waved at him this early in the morning was. The encounter in the wildlands left a deep impression on him. "It's you. Long time no see. Are you here for a meal? Come in," Bufang said expressionlessly as he placed the plate on the table. The gazes of the four people and the dog followed Bufang's movements and landed on the table. The sound of them swallowing their saliva could be heard one after another. Everyone subconsciously stepped into the store and stared at Bufang, who was already sitting at the table with his chopsticks raised and ready to taste the food. Bufang didn't care about the other people's actions. He opened his chopsticks, and Bufang gently picked up a third of the sausage. Between the chopsticks and the sausage, the casing was squeezed by the pressure, and the fragrant oil naturally flowed out. The fragrance suddenly became even more intense. Bufang carefully observed the sausage. The cut was extremely smooth, and the meat inside was tender and fragrant. There were even strands of white meat tendons running through it. Just by looking at it, Bufang couldn't help but feel hungry. After taking a bite of the sausage, he could almost hear the crunching sound of the crispy casing and Bufang's teeth colliding. Following Bufang's bite, Qian Bao and the others also slightly opened their mouths and subconsciously licked their tongues. The sausage was very springy. After it was fried, the crispy casing and the tender and fragrant beef inside instantly enveloped Bufang's mouth. The fragrance lingered in his mouth like a thick fog. Because it was slightly hot, Bufang held the sausage in his mouth and lightly exhaled a breath of hot air, which was accompanied by the fragrance of the sausage. Rumble, woof! A sound came from the stomachs of the four people. Blackie licked its lips and barked. However, at this moment, Bufang was completely immersed in the delicacy. When he started to chew, he experienced the taste of the sausage even more perfectly. Because there was some rock sugar mixed in, the casing was crispy and slightly sweet, which made it more flavorful. It caused the fragrance of the meat to burst out like a bomb, instantly rushing out of Bufang's nostrils. "Delicious!" Bufang couldn't help but praise. The taste of the sausage was so familiar to him. This sausage made from the 7th grade wandering dragon cow's meat and various spirit herbs tasted even better. After all, it was the meat of a 7th grade spirit beast. As expected, ordinary meat couldn't compare to it. After swallowing the sausage, Bufang licked his lips as if he hadn't had enough. His eyes seemed to be a little blurred. Why are you all looking at me like that?" Bufang broke away from his blurred state and immediately looked at everyone with a puzzled expression. Bufang couldn't help but feel that the four people and one dog were drooling. "You cooked this sausage?" And Ai Yan's beautiful eyes looked directly at Bufang as she asked. Bufang nodded and stuffed a third of the sausage into his mouth. "Can I try a piece?" And Ai Yan hesitated for a moment and asked. The others also looked at Bufang with faces full of expectation. The taste of the sausage really tickled their hearts. Sausage, sausage, it was so fragrant that they couldn't control themselves. Bufang glanced at her and said indifferently, "No." And Ai Yan was stunned. Tang Yin was stunned. Everyone else was stunned. Oh, except for Blackie. It was still licking its lips and looking at Bufang with its eyes full of expectation. Someone actually rejected her? And Ai Yan was a little confused. How many years had it been since she last encountered such a situation? And Ai Yan took off her veil and revealed a devastatingly beautiful face. Her tender red lips slightly curled up as her beautiful eyes looked straight at Bufang and said, "Then now, can I try the sausage?" And Ai Yan was more confident in her appearance than her strength. No one could remain calm and composed in front of her. However, she was wrong this time. Bufang still glanced at her and a stunned expression flashed in his eyes. Then, he continued to answer indifferently, "No. You." And Ai Yen was furious. How could he speak to a beauty like this? "Then tell me, how can I taste the sausage?" And Ai Yen really wanted to slap this stinky guy to death. However, when she thought about how this hateful guy could cook such a delicious sausage, she couldn't bear to do it. "Are you stupid? Look at the menu." Bufang curled his lips. He picked up another sausage and happily swallowed it. As he chewed, the aftertaste lingered in his mouth. And Ai Yen looked at Bufang's infuriating expression and really wanted to kick his face. Resisting the temptation of the sausage fragrance, and Ai Yen raised her head and looked at the menu on the wall of the store. With one look, her beautiful eyes widened once again. Woof! Blackie was furious. This stinky brat actually dared to ignore it. How could such a delicious sausage not be given to your Lord Go? Bufang was stunned. He once again rubbed Lord Go's head and softly said, "Stop messing around." "Messing around your sister?" Blackie roared once again. This roar was filled with monstrous anger and desire for the sausage. Woof! Bufang sighed in his heart. He knew that he wouldn't be able to eat the last piece of sausage. He helplessly patted Blackie's head, picked up the sausage, and passed it to Blackie. Blackie stuck out its tongue and its eyes lit up. It excitedly swallowed the sausage in one bite and then squinted its eyes with a face full of enjoyment. And Ai Yen turned her gaze back and wanted to question Bufang about the unreasonable price. However, before she could say anything, she saw the scene of Bufang feeding the sausage to a dog. Just like that, the delicious sausage was fed by Bufang to a big black dog. Black dog. Dog. What do you mean? Why can't it eat it but I can't? And Ai Yen questioned with a cold expression. Bufang stood up and put away the plate and chopsticks. When he heard Ai Yen's question, he immediately looked at her with a puzzled expression and said, "There's no reason. You guys are customers and it isn't." After saying that, he walked toward the kitchen. When he reached the entrance, he seemed to have thought of something and turned his head to look at the crowd. "By the way, I'll give you a reminder. This wandering dragon cow sausage is only provided with 3 sausages a day. If you want to eat it, remember to order it quickly." Chapter 114. Bufang stared at the 3 wandering dragon beef sausages that were boiling in the wok of oil. Even though he had already eaten one, he could not help but feel a craving when he smelled the fragrance emitted by the sausages. A delicacy made from the meat of a 7th-grade spirit beast was truly too tempting. Why doesn't he just rob a bank? A single sausage is actually selling for 250 crystals. He's simply insane. And Ai Yen angrily sat down on a chair and could not help but silently curse. Tang Yin, who was sitting beside Ai Yen, could not help but feel a little speechless. Even if it was 250 crystals per sausage, he still dug out his wallet and bought it. Then wouldn't he be even more insane if he bought the sausages? Qian Bao sucked in a breath of cold air. As expected of the Imperial City's famous black-hearted store, a single sausage 250 crystals. That was nearly a week's worth of sales from the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, yet he could not even afford a single sausage. And Ai Yen glanced at the big black dog that was happily lying at the entrance and felt a surge of anger. Such a delicious sausage was eaten by a big black dog just like that. It was simply a reckless waste of God's gift. However, she had no choice. Just like what Bufang had said, she was a customer since she came to the store. If she wanted to taste the dishes, she would naturally have to pay and purchase crystals. However, the big black dog was not a customer, so Bufang could let it eat the sausage. Simply put, this was an issue of status. Even though Ai Yen was angry, she could still reluctantly accept it. After Ai Yen finished reading the menu, she was honestly shocked. Every single dish on the menu was ridiculously expensive, yet people actually came to eat it. and Ai Yen was slightly speechless as she looked at the several fatties wrapped in overcoats at the neighboring table. Bufang quickly walked out of the kitchen with 2 white porcelain bowls in his hand. On the bowls were 3 wandering dragon beef sausages that had been cut open. The rich fragrance was almost materializing as it drifted out of the porcelain bowls. How fragrant! Everyone in the store was attracted by the fragrance. They could not help but twitch their noses in an attempt to capture even more of the fragrance. "This is the wandering dragon beef sausage you ordered, please enjoy," Bufang said to Ai Yen. Then, he placed the remaining plate in front of Tang Yin, turned around and went back into the kitchen. He brought out the remaining plate and placed it in front of Qian Bao. The 3 of them eagerly started eating. Tang Yin swallowed a piece of sausage in one gulp. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets as he chewed with all his might. It was as if he was about to swallow his own tongue. Lu Xiaoxiao's appearance was similar to Tang Yin's. Both of them were completely immersed in the delicacy and were unable to extricate themselves. And Ai Yen, on the other hand, was more rational. She solemnly sized up the sausages and observed them carefully. She began to evaluate the color, fragrance, and appearance. After knowing what to do, she picked up a piece of sausage and began to slowly chew on it. The rich meaty fragrance gradually bloomed in Ai Yan's mouth like a gurgling stream, causing her body and mind to be completely intoxicated by the delicacy. "It smells so good. Is this really a sausage? It's simply the most delicious sausage I've ever eaten." And Ai Yen was incomparably shocked and was completely captivated. When Bufang saw the 3 of them eating with relish, the corners of his mouth twitched. Then, he turned around and went back into the kitchen to prepare the dishes for the fatty and the others. When Bufang had served all the dishes, and Ai Yen and the others had also recovered from the delicacy of the wandering dragon beef sausage, they all looked at Bufang with a strange expression. And Ai Yen stared fixedly at Bufang. Her gaze seemed as if she wanted to swallow Bufang in one gulp. "Tell me, how did you manage to prevent the spirit energy within the spirit beast meat from dissipating? I've researched this method for a long time, but I'm still unable to control the spirit energy within the spirit beast meat." With just one bite, Ai Yen already knew the reason why Bufang's sausage was so expensive. Eating this sausage was even more powerful than swallowing a 6th-grade elixir. The amount of spirit energy contained within the sausage was simply beyond her imagination. The meat used to make this sausage was definitely not the meat of an ordinary spirit beast. Wandering dragon cow, could it be that wandering dragon cow? Bufang wiped off the water stains on his hands and glanced at Ai Yen. The eyes of this absolute beauty were filled with a thirst for knowledge. Her large eyes were like flowing water as she looked at Bufang with a face full of expectation. Even Bufang was almost moved. "This is a secret," Bufang said. And Ai Yen was so angry. She almost forgot that beauty was useless in front of this blockhead. Once the spirit energy within the spirit beast meat is cut open, it will dissipate. The higher the grade, the faster the rate of dissipation. The grade of this spirit beast meat is definitely not low. How did you do it? "This is a secret," Bufang continued to say. And Ai Yan's face darkened. At this moment she really had the urge to slap this fellow into minced meat. "Then you should tell me what grade this spirit beast meat is, right?" And Ai Yen asked angrily. This unbelievably dense spirit energy made Ai Yen have a guess in her heart. However, she was still a little unsure. Because, if this guess was true, it would simply be too terrifying. "This is a secret. Oh, I can tell you about this." Bufang originally wanted to answer out of habit, but after being stunned for a moment, he quickly changed his answer. The true energy in Ai Yan's body started to circulate and she resisted the urge to throw a punch. "Are you addicted to secrets? Why do you think a sausage is so expensive?" Bufang looked at Ai Yen and lightly said, "Because the meat is expensive. This meat is the meat of a 7th-grade wandering dragon cow." At the entrance of the imperial city, the third prince's army had already set up camp on a plain 10 miles away. They did not choose to enter the imperial city. The third prince took off his military uniform and changed into a scholarly white robe. He elegantly stood in front of the army with 2 people following beside him. One of them was wearing a black veil conical bamboo hat, while the other was tall and burly with a dragon-like aura. "Your Highness, this trip to the imperial city will definitely be filled with danger. I must follow by your side at all times to ensure your safety," the tall and burly man said. Ji Qingxue helplessly glanced at this person but did not refuse. With his hands behind his back, he slowly walked toward the majestic imperial city under the morning sun. As he stepped into the city, the cold wind rustled. However, there was a sense of familiarity that assaulted his senses. Ji Qingxue reminisced as he looked at the streets of the imperial city. There was not much change compared to when he left the imperial city, but he could feel some changes. In the distance, 2 groups of people slowly approached to welcome Ji Qingxue. "We respectfully welcome the third prince back to the imperial city. This humble subject has specially received King Yu's order to invite your highness into King Yu's manor for a chat," an old subject said to Ji Qingxue. His tone could not be considered respectful. Ji Qingxue recognized this person. He was a high-ranking official in the imperial court. It seemed like he had chosen to side with King Yu. However, this was not a reason for him to be arrogant. Ji Qingxue expressionlessly glanced at the person coldly and curled up the corner of his mouth. "Your Highness sure is arrogant. No matter how down and out I am still a prince. When I was killing enemies in the foreign lands, your Highness was still lingering in a gentle village. What right do you have to speak to me in such a manner?" That subject immediately became sluggish. His pupils constricted and his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. The boorish man behind Ji Qingxue immediately widened his eyes in anger. He angrily snorted and took a step forward. He fiercely glared at that subject, scaring him so much that he continuously retreated several steps and fell on his butt. This subject was only a scholar. How could he withstand the angry glare of this man who was like a ferocious beast? In the distance, another group of people slowly approached. The person in the lead was a young eunuch. Obviously, he was one of the Crown Prince's men. "Greetings, Your Highness. When the Crown Prince found out that Your Highness is returning to the imperial city today, he specially ordered this servant to come and welcome Your Highness into the palace to have a chat with the Crown Prince." The young eunuch was very good with words and his attitude was very respectful. Ji Qingxue's expression slightly eased up and he nodded. However, even though he nodded, he did not show any intention of moving. He merely glanced at the 2 groups of people and chuckled. A gentle voice came out from his mouth. "Go back and tell my 2 dear brothers that I am tired from the journey and do not wish to see them. If there is anything, we can talk about it at father's funeral." Chapter 115. King Yu's Manor, between the waterside pavilions. King Yu walked with his hands behind his back as he slowly walked along the long corridor. He was wearing a long robe with a feather cloak draped over his shoulders, appearing calm and collected. Behind him, the minister who went to greet the third prince had a trace of fear on his face as he blindly followed behind, not even daring to breathe loudly. "You're saying that my third brother rejected our invitation?" King Yu's indifferent voice rang out, startling the minister. The minister hurriedly nodded his head. King Yu immediately chuckled with a hint of playfulness in his laughter. He looked toward the pure white snow in the courtyard and the corner of his mouth curled up. "What's this? Now that you've grown up, you plan to come back and get involved in this mess? The imperial city is already chaotic enough. Do you think it's not chaotic enough?" Yuan muttered as if he was asking about something. Then, a trace of disdain appeared on his face. "You're a prince who was almost abandoned. What qualifications do you have to compete with me?" Beside the gate of heavenly mystery, the Crown Prince's palace. Two figures stood ramrod straight. Looking from the Crown Prince's palace, they could practically see the entire gate of heavenly mystery. Regarding my third brother's return to the imperial city, does Elder Zhao have any questions or suggestions? The Crown Prince looked toward the elderly man beside him. Calling him an elderly man was somewhat inaccurate, because other than his white hair, Zhao Muxing's face was not considered old. Zhao Muxing's gaze was muddy and experienced, as if he had seen through the fickleness of the world. He indifferently said, "Crown Prince, there's no need to worry. Even though the third prince is a prince, he was not favored by the previous emperor. He spent his years fighting in foreign lands and was tainted with the aura of war. He's destined to have no fate with the throne." When the Crown Prince heard this, he immediately felt somewhat happy. Even though he did not really care about this third brother of his, with the current chaotic situation in the imperial city, the intervention of a prince was enough to cause some ripples. Zhao Muxing glanced at the Crown Prince and smiled. With the support of the Ouyang family, Yang family, and my Zhao family, what else do you have to worry about? Even if His Majesty's will has yet to be announced, so what? With the support of the ministers, His Majesty only needs to wait for the coronation. Zhao Muxing's words seemed to have some sort of magical power that soothed the anxiety in the Crown Prince's heart and made him feel at ease. Although the Crown Prince felt that something was strange, he couldn't pinpoint what it was. "Your Highness, the Gate of Heavenly Mystery was built by the founding emperor of the Light Wind Empire. Legend has it that a spirit array was carved into it. Is this true?" Zhao Muxing asked, pointing at the vast square of the Gate of Heavenly Mystery in the distance. The Crown Prince was taken aback. As far as he could see, he gazed at the Gate of Heavenly Mystery Plaza that was already covered in pure white snow, and fell into deep thought. There are indeed records of the Gate of Tianxian in our ancestral records, but the earliest records date back to hundreds of years ago. There's no way to verify it now. At least, when Father was alive, he never mentioned anything about the Gate of Tianxuan's spirit array. "Perhaps it's just a legend," the Crown Prince said. Zhao Muxing gave the Crown Prince a serious look. When he saw that the Crown Prince did not seem to be lying, his brows furrowed. "Is it really just a legend? Your golden shumai, please enjoy." Bu Fang placed a basket of steaming hot golden shumai in front of Yen and lightly said. He subconsciously glanced at the porcelain plate on the table and realized that this woman had actually ordered almost all of the dishes in his store. When Yen saw the golden shumai, her beautiful eyes immediately lit up. She hurriedly nodded her head and swallowed the last piece of red braised meat in her mouth. Burp. "It's been a long time since I've eaten such delicious food." After burping, Yen stuck out her rosy tongue and licked her tender red lips. Her pearly white teeth were faintly discernible, and her blurred appearance was filled with a sense of seduction. Bu Fang glanced at her actions and the corners of his mouth twitched. He wiped off the water stains on his hands, pulled over a chair, and sat across from Yen. Tang Yin and Lu Xiaoxiao had also ordered some dishes, but they were already full after eating until now. However, as a woman, and a beautiful woman at that, Yen was actually eating without the slightest scruple. She completely had the appearance of a veteran foodie. She used her chopsticks to pick up a golden shumai and slightly squeezed it. The oil inside the shumai immediately shook and almost spilled out. Yen carefully used her hands to protect it and then swallowed it in one gulp. Her cheeks bulged and she looked extremely adorable. "Senior, I didn't expect you to actually be an authentic chef." Tang Yin sighed as he looked at Bu Fang and said. He had always thought that Bu Fang was just using that as an excuse to conceal his identity. "I am indeed a professional chef who runs a small restaurant in the imperial city," Bu Fang said while nodding his head. Lu Xiaoxiao blinked her large eyes as she looked at Bu Fang. She was a little suspicious. Bufang's current appearance did not have the slightest trace of the domineering aura he had when he was in the wildlands. However, when she thought about it again and saw her master wolfing down the food without any ladylike image, her suspicions towards Bufang were immediately dispelled. Compared to her master, who was a 7th-grade battle saint, who was a glutton, this senior was simply too much of an expert. "Senior, I wonder if the phoenix blood herb in the Valley of the Fallen Phoenix is in your hands?" Lu Xiaoxiao asked seriously. When Bufang heard this question, he was immediately slightly astonished. He expressionlessly glanced at her and did not deny it. He nodded his head. Thinking about it, the two of them must have returned to the Valley of the Fallen Phoenix after they were safe and discovered that the phoenix blood herb had been plucked, so they suspected him. Seeing that Bufang did not deny it, Lu Xiaoxiao's face immediately revealed a trace of happiness. She quickly looked toward her master, only to find that An Yen had picked up 2 more golden shumai and was stuffing them into her mouth. Her face was filled with happiness. "Master, don't forget why we came to the Imperial City." Lu Xiaoxiao did not know whether to laugh or cry. This gluttonous master of hers did not care about anything once he saw something delicious. "Junior sister, there's no need to be anxious. Senior is right here. We can discuss the matter of the phoenix blood herb after master finishes eating." Tang Yin slightly knitted his brows and glanced at Lu Xiaoxiao. Bufang leaned against the chair and glanced at the three of them. He seemed to be deep in thought. So it turned out that the reason the three of them came to the store was the phoenix blood herb. Haha. Owner Bu, long time no see. Just as Bufang was deep in thought, a heroic laughter suddenly came from outside the door. That laughter was somewhat familiar and it interrupted Bufang's thoughts. Bufang puzzledly looked toward the door and saw 2 figures stepping into the store together. Wasn't the person who was laughing loudly the third prince, Ji Qingxue, who had already gone on an expedition against the sects in the outer regions? Beside Ji Qingxue was a man wearing a veil and a bamboo hat. His figure was also rather familiar. It's you? You've returned from your business trip?" The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched as he asked. Ji Qingxue was startled for a moment, as if he did not understand Bufang's words. However, it did not matter. He still let out a carefree smile as he sat in front of the table and hurriedly said to Bufang, "Owner Bu, I haven't drunk the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine in a long time. I'm craving for it. Quickly give me a portion." Bufang nodded and stood up. He looked toward the man wearing the veil and bamboo hat and asked, "What about you? Same pot of wine?" A hoarse voice sounded out. The man took off his veil and revealed a handsome face that Bufang was familiar with. Xiao Yu lightly smiled as he nodded toward Bufang. It was indeed the two of them. However, Bufang was still a little puzzled. How did the two of them end up together? "Aren't you going to order some dishes to go with the wine?" Bufang walked to the entrance of the kitchen and turned around to promote. "No, I only want wine. I'm here today to relieve my alcohol addiction." Ji Qingxue shook his head and said with a smile. Xiao Yu also did the same. Bufang suddenly felt a little regretful. He responded with an "oh" and entered the kitchen. Xiao Yu sat opposite Ji Qingxue. His gaze fell on the beautiful face in front of him, who was chewing on the dish in big mouthfuls. He subconsciously froze for a moment. Then, Xiao Yu's pupils constricted and he immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. This woman. Why is she here? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.